Chapter 1246. Kong Teichu, how dare you hit me? Zhou Xian was stunned for a moment before he realized that he had been slapped. In an instant he was so angry that his entire body was trembling. His flushed face was trembling violently and his eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. Who was Zhou Xian? He was the dignified sect leader of the Kunlun sect, the former #1 orthodoxy in the world. Even the prestigious preaching sects had to show some respect to him. However, Jiang Tian had slapped him directly in front of hundreds of millions of people. How could he show his face in front of others in the future? Congratulations, you've learned how to answer first. Jiang Tian smiled faintly and slapped him across the air again. This time Zhou Xian was prepared in advance. He retreated as fast as lightning. However, he felt that there were palm shadows all around him and he couldn't dodge. Smack. This slap landed solidly on Zhou Xian's face again. Two of his teeth flew out and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. If it weren't for your master Li Wuji, I would have killed you long ago. Jiang Tian looked down at the pale Zhou Xian and scolded him harshly as if he was lecturing a child. Li Wuji and I call each other brothers and treat each other as equals. Based on seniority, you should call me uncle. What right do you have to call me by my name? Impudent. Get lost. You have no right to speak here. Remember, I didn't kill you today because you're not worthy of me killing you. In the future, someone will definitely kill you. After being humiliated by Jiang Tian, Zhou Xian glared venomously at Jiang Tian. He was so angry that his face was red and his whole body was trembling violently. The vitality in his chest was turbulent and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. However, he didn't dare to attack Jiang Tian. Yes, he didn't dare to. He knew that he was no match for Jiang Tian. Even if Jiang Tian was restricted by the Great Immortal Trap Formation, he still had 100 ways to kill him. Good words can't persuade a damned ghost. Since you're determined to die, this old man won't pull you back. After saying that, he retreated to the outer mountain peak. He comforted himself in his heart. Anyway, this kid was going to die soon, so why bother with him? Later, I'll whip his corpse to vent my anger and grind his bones to dust. Sect Master Muxian, you are the sect master who smashed the Kunlun sect, the head of the world's Daoist sects and a senior legendary figure. He actually dared to slap you. This is intolerable. Senior G, as long as you say the word, I'll chop him into pieces. Many famous preaching clans and reclusive royalty showed their righteous indignation, condemning Jiang Tian in unison. However, no one dared to act rashly. Right now it was a showdown between the leader of a famous sect and Jiang Tian. How could an average person be his opponent? Forget it. I won't bicker with a person who is about to die. Besides, he has done a great service to Wuxia. Let others kill him, I won't do it. Zhou Xian was stubborn. He sneered and pretended to be virtuous, waving his hand to interrupt the words of his fellow cultivators. Look, this is the magnanimity of a generation's legendary figure. Does Kong Teichu have it? How can a narrow-minded person take on such a great responsibility? Yi Hui snorted with a disdainful expression. Kong Teichu is too arrogant because of his talent. He's too fierce and shows off his ability. Even if he survives today's crisis, he'll definitely fall in the future. The senior monk of Huangjue Temple shook his head and judged. He couldn't stand people like Jiang Tian. He was too arrogant and didn't follow the rules. He only respected the strong and didn't know how to respect his seniors. Even if his seniors were wrong, they were still his seniors. Besides, he was trying to mediate with good intentions. How could you hit him? Ji Mingchuan was so angry that he gritted his teeth and snorted. He's just a brat and he thinks he's invincible. My Kunlun sect can't beat you, but I don't believe you can match up to the famous preaching sects. I'd like to see how you, Kong Teichu, will be trampled under the feet of the famous preaching sects today. Li Kuangkol and the others snorted too. Jiang Tian was like a mountain pressing down on their heads, making them unable to breathe. They knew that Jiang Tian was too strong and couldn't catch up to him. Therefore, they were especially eager for Jiang Tian to be killed. With Zhou Xian's withdrawal from the battlefield, it also announced that Jiang Tian's last hope of making peace with the famous preaching sects was shattered. Did everyone see that? Kong Teichu has no respect for his elders and doesn't follow the order of seniority. He's crazy. Yin Haojie sneered and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. At this time the two sides were competing for Dao ideals, interests and life and death. They were like fire and water. A great battle was inevitable. Kong Taechu, you're so ignorant. At this time the black bear puppet stepped forward and Yu Wendon shouted. Isn't it good for everyone to live in this confinement? You don't know the profound meaning of the confinement. It's part of the bunker plan, a declaration of peace to the universe. It declares that we're a low-level civilization and won't be killed. Your recovery of spirit chi is tantamount to tearing apart the bunker and exposing Earth to the eyes and guns of the overlords in the universe. The ruins of immortality, also known as the deity ground, was originally a new territory developed by the Qing Emperor. It was connected to the ancient Earth and could have been reconciled. But Yu Zhangtian killed people from other dimensions and caused a bloodbath. That's why the conflict is irreconcilable. The famous preaching sects persuaded you not to recover spirit chi for the sake of the living beings on Earth, but you were stubborn and stubborn. You even killed my son in desperation. How dare you? I'm going to cut you into pieces today. As soon as he said this, the entire place fell into dead silence. Jiang Tian smiled but didn't say anything. Doesn't he know the truth about the ruins of immortality? He even said that the ruins of immortality and Earth are friends. Many people looked at each other in disbelief. It wasn't Yu Wendon's fault. He lived in another dimension and didn't know how to use modern communication devices or watch live broadcasts. How could he have known the truth about the ruins of immortality had been made public? Master, it's not like that. Yu Fenghua, Jimai and the others were even more embarrassed. They hurried to talk to each other with their immortal will. Damn it, the news has already spread. Why didn't you say so earlier? Yu Wending's face immediately flushed red and he was extremely embarrassed. His figure staggered and he almost fell off the black bear puppet beast. Yin Haojia shouted, even if there's some misunderstanding, so what? Why can't we sit down and talk about it? Kong Taechu, you killed people. You're looking down on the famous preaching sections. You must be killed. He argued unreasonably, using clever words and expressions to distort black and white. Why don't you check how many people Kong Taechu has killed over the years? How can he take on such a big responsibility? Indeed. Even if the spirit chi revival is inevitable, this guy can't be left alive, let alone control the Myth Alliance. Kong Taechu, hand over the spirit chi revival seeds and the control of the spirit guiding array, and we'll spare your life. Ji Shichi snorted as murderous intent appeared in his eyes. Hand it over. Jiang Yuing said concisely. Interesting. Shameless. Jiang Tian smiled. Yu Jingtian and the others wanted to attack Kong Taechu's dojo and kill my disciples. I, Kong Taechu, deserve to die. Could it be that you will only be satisfied if I, Jiang Taichu, stretch out my neck to be executed without any resistance? Now you've made a big mistake. Not only do you not repent but you want to kill me again. Where's justice? Where's the logic? It seems that Yu Jingtian and the others are not so arrogant for no reason. As the saying goes, if the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. It's all because of your parents. Yu Jingtian and the other two were embarrassed and speechless. In fact, Jiang Tian's words made sense. The famous preaching sects were unreasonable. Jiang Tian had invited them to discuss the spirit chi revival plan, and his attitude was very friendly. Instead, it was Yu Jingtian and the others who, for their own personal gain, had distorted the truth and misled the public. They wanted to kill Jiang Tian and attack the Heavenly Clear sect disciples first. Everyone was speechless. Only Yin Haojia straightened his neck and roared, Kong Taechu, are you an idiot? You've been around for so many years. Don't you know that in the cultivation world the strong are respected and the weak are ants? This is the truth. You're just ants, insects. Under the immortal trap, other than the famous preaching sects, everyone else is ants. You, Kong Taechu, are just an ant in our eyes. You're a lowly life. Why do we, the famous preaching sects, need to reason with an ant like you? What justice? Do you know how to reason with ants and cockroaches that you've trampled to death? We'll kill you if we say so. You should wash your neck and wait for us to chop your head off. How dare you resist? Ah, we were just talking about seniority. Now we're talking about who has the bigger fist and who's right. Jiang Tian laughed loudly. His laughter was like the roar of a dragon and the roar of a tiger. Although he was laughing, there was an indescribable chill in his voice. Then he stopped laughing and sneered. No matter what you say, we'll still have to fight in the end. Let's fight. I, Kong Taechu, am not good at anything else, but when it comes to fighting, I've never bowed down to anyone in the universe. He sneered and said, Come on. I can't wait to twist your heads off and kick them like balls. Guys, why are you still talking nonsense with a small fry like him? Let's kill him. Xianxia was the most hot-tempered one. He couldn't stand it when Xianxia died in front of him. He roared and was the first to attack. He raised his hand and the golden whip in his hand broke the sound barrier. It turned into a golden light and pierced toward Xianxia. Chapter 1247. As the golden whip flew out, the wind howled and thunder and lightning intertwined. An earth-shattering sea of thunder was formed. Moreover, the golden whip grew bigger in the wind and became dozens of meters long. It was like a cruise missile with a strange and shrill roar. The long white turbulence dragged into a long tail and pierced toward Jiang Tiandong with amazing power. This is the male whip of the male and female double whips used by Grand Preceptor Wen of the Shang dynasty. It has 26 segments and each segment has 4 talisman seals. It is used to attack the 8 righteous deities. Senior Taichu, be careful. Seeing this, Yi Karen's pretty face turned pale. She shouted to remind Jiang Tian. Even though she was full of fighting spirit and had experienced many battles, she was still frightened by the terrifying power. Humph, after this battle I must kill this woman. Hearing this woman mention the origin of the whip, Zhou Xian glared at Yi Karen angrily and then sneered. It's no exaggeration to say that this whip can kill a nascent soul stage heavenly lord. Kong Teichu is restricted by the immortal trapping formation. He won't be able to withstand it. Among the treasures of the Shang dynasty, this item was ranked in the top 5. It was far more powerful than ordinary spiritual treasures and could be called a quasi-genuine weapon. This was the terror of the preaching prestigious sections. Even though their cultivation methods were incomplete and they had few talents, they were rich and had many magic treasures. In the past they were on par with the Qing Emperor. You're just an ant. How dare you kill me? Facing this divine whip, Jiang Tian's eyes were indifferent. He didn't even disperse the thick earth God-suppressing chains. Instead he raised his hand and punched. The vast true vitality immediately turned into a fist the size of a small mountain. Looked like a beautiful jade sculpture and was dazzling. It hit the whip. Clang. Suddenly, a loud sound of metal colliding rang out. Many people covered their ears, but their ears were bleeding and their eardrums were ruptured. They almost fainted on the spot. Then, under everyone's shocked gaze, the golden whip that was like a cruise missile was knocked away. With a loud boom, the golden whip shot uncontrollably into the army formation, crushing several hundred of the preaching clans. Their corpses fell like rain and it only stopped when it shattered a mountain peak. As for that giant jade white fist, it remained motionless. Only when Jiang Tian withdrew his fist did it transform back into true essence. It was clear that Jiang Tian had the complete upper hand. What? Seeing this scene, Xianxia's entire body trembled and he was greatly shocked. Even Yu Wenden and the other 2 leaders of the famous sects were slightly stunned. He actually sent it flying. Zhou Xian was flabbergasted as well. He felt extremely awkward and felt as if he had been slapped in the face. Whip. Just as Xianxia was about to retrieve the golden whip, Jiang Tian waved his hand and took the golden whip into his hand. He easily erased the divine sense imprint on it and threw it to Huqingtian. Take it. This is a lightning element magic treasure that contains the energy of wind and lightning. I'll refine it in the future and give it to the disheveled old man Zhang Qianlei. Kong Teichu, give me back my treasure. Xianxia was taken aback and shouted angrily in a hurry. Everyone was immediately speechless. Can you be a little more shameless? You used a magic treasure to hit him and your magic treasure was taken away. Do you have any more treasures? Come and hit me. I'll take all of them. Jiang Tian said coldly with his hands behind his back. I'm so pissed off. Kill. Xianxia shouted and took out a magic treasure that looked like a toilet bowl and threw it at Jiang Tian. This thing has a strange shape. Is it a golden toilet bowl? The famous sects of the Preaching dynasty are indeed rich. Even their toilet bowls are made of pure gold. In the livestream room, bullet comments popped up one after another. This should be the legendary primeval chaos golden chalice, the most precious treasure of the Jia sect. It shone in the War of Gods and even captured the 12 golden deities of the Chan sect. If nothing goes wrong, the 9 Yellow Tunes River array will also be activated. Zhou Xian's eyes lit up once again and his spirit was greatly shaken. In his eyes, Jiang Tian was already a dead man. So it's the primeval chaos golden chalice. This time Kong Techu is in danger. If you don't listen to your elders, you'll suffer. The old monk of Huangjue Temple shook his head and smiled bitterly. He sighed with slight relief and regret. The primeval chaos golden chalice contained the wonders of heaven and earth. Karma was unknown, tribulations were unknown, and divine powers were unknown. It was known as holding the universe and the four seas, allowing one to collect all the treasures. It was extremely powerful and was always successful in collecting people and items. As soon as this treasure appeared, golden light filled the sky and shook the surroundings. Sand and stones flew between heaven and earth. Endless bright golden light shot toward Jiang Tian's head like lightning. This treasure is extraordinary. Jiang Tian's face turned serious for the first time. Others might not know the cause of this treasure, but Jiang Tian understood at a glance. It was made of primeval chaos gold and contained Tao Tai Dao patterns. This gold was known as the pristine gold of heaven and earth. Although it was weaker than divine materials, it was at least an immortal material. The Tao Tai Dao patterns inscribed in it were also extraordinary. It could devour all things and was not much weaker than the sky-devouring demonic gourd. It might even be better. Good. Primeval chaos golden chalice, this is more like it. However, Jiang Tian was not shocked. Instead, he was delighted. He took a step forward and his eyes revealed the ecstasy of an old hunter who saw his prey. With a crack in his dantian, several thick earth god-suppressing chains exploded. The vermilion bird fake elixir jumped. Jiang Tian waved his fingers. A ray of vermilion bird fire formed 100-meter-long flaming saber and slashed down. Whoosh! As the saber slashed out, a wave of heat spread out. Within a radius of 10 miles, the trees were instantly scorched. Black smoke even rose up and caught fire. The saber radiance was dazzling, causing people to tear up. Many people subconsciously closed their eyes. Only a few top experts felt it with their divine senses. Under Jiang Tian's blazing saber radiance, the primeval chaos golden chalice could only hold on for a few seconds. Then, like a hot saber, it was slashed by the saber and split into 2 pieces. Jiang Tian raised his hand and took it into his hand. What? Even the primeval chaos golden chalice can be slashed. What evil technique is he cultivating? Zhou Xian and the old monk of Huangjue Temple suddenly screamed like cats whose tails had been stepped on. They could not believe it. Kill. Activate the Yellow River of 9 Bends formation for me. This time, the backlash of the primeval chaos golden chalice was so strong that Yin Haojia's dantian trembled violently. He spat out blood and his face was twisted in pain like a ferocious ghost. He staggered and took 3 steps back in a row. A trace of determination flashed across his face and he shouted loudly. Then he activated the formation disc in his hand and turned it 9 times. Let me borrow the Yellow River of 10,000 miles. Boom. In the Yinshang army behind him. On a huge formation chariot, many formation components suddenly rotated according to the positions of the 9 palaces and 8 trigrams. The formation chi filled the heaven and earth. The Dharma momentum was like the Yellow River. Boundless and boundless, it enveloped Jiang Tian. The chilly wind blew and the black fog filled the air. The sun and the moon were lost. Leisurely and indistinct. The miserable air rushed to the sky and the haze covered the earth. The murderous aura of the 9 Yellow River formation of 9 bends instantly enveloped a radius of 10 miles. It filled the entire valley and even affected the surrounding mountains full of spectators. A single strand of the formation chi of this killing formation could kill a foundation establishment expert. Moreover, it was boundless right now. The endless and tragic haze of the formation chi swept toward Jiang Tian like raging waves beating the shore. The miasma of the formation chi had a spiritual attack that could destroy one's soul. No matter how hard one cultivated for 1,000 years, it would be reduced to a flat cake. It would damage one's spirit and dishearten one's spirit. This formation is terrifying. Even immortals can't reach it. It has cut off the 3 flowers on the top. Even if the Buddha comes, it will also eliminate the 5 chi in the chest. Seeing this, the shock on Zhou Xian's face faded. His gaze became cold and stern. He sneered proudly. Kong Techu, you don't know your limits. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. You can't escape from this formation. I'm afraid you'll die today. Yin Haojie, how can you do this? Tens of thousands of engineers are assembling the spirit-guiding formation here. Hundreds of thousands of spectators are watching. Are you going to kill them too? Seeing this, Zhou Xian's face turned pale. He then shouted angrily. At this moment, the formation covered a radius of 10 miles and was still expanding. Soon, the miasma of the formation chi spread to the spectators. Those who touched it died immediately and turned into blood and bones in the blink of an eye. Run quickly. On the surrounding mountains, countless spectators saw this scene. They couldn't help but be scared out of their wits. They fled in all directions. Don't step on me. Someone save me. Kong Techu, save me. Aren't you the savior of the world? Soon there was a stampede. Wan, who was wearing high heels, fell to the ground. She screamed miserably. In the blink of an eye, she was trampled into meat paste and died. Until the moment of her death, her face was filled with astonishment and fear. She never expected that she would die in the hands of a famous preaching family who had always supported Zhang Tian. She shouted the names of Zhang Tian and the savior of the world. I can activate this formation, but I can't control it. All of you will be buried with Kong Techu. Yin Haojie held the activation disc in his hand and spun it continuously. His eyes were ruthless and cruel. He said with a fierce voice, Zhou Xian, you're a veteran of the battlefield, but you're only soft-hearted. Don't you know which emperor didn't step on the corpses of the common people to ascend to the throne? We, the descendants of Yin Shang, kill people like killing ants. Good. Is this how you famous preaching families do things? Zhang Tian glanced at the people around him who fell one after another. This was the first time he was angry. He snorted coldly and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Although he had lived 2 lives and killed countless people, he had always killed people who deserved to be killed. He had never killed innocent people like Yin Haojie. Today I, Kong Techu, will let the blood of the famous preaching families spill over the entire valley of Mount Imei. After today there will be no preaching families in Wuxia. Before Zhang Tian's voice had even died away, a flame rushed out from his dantian and turned into the divine body of vermilion bird with huge wings that stretched across the sky. It was blazing red and it soared into the sky. Chapter 1248. The Suzaku divine body burst out. Even though the thick earth god suppressing chains were suppressing his cultivation, he was still like a sun in the sky. He spat out endless flames that were thousands of meters long and swept across the sky. The moment the vermilion bird true fire and the 9 bends yellow river formation chi came into contact with each other, it was like hot oil coming into contact with fire. Under everyone's shocked gaze, the sky within dozens of miles was ignited and there seemed to be a giant fire shield in the sky. How is this possible? Yin Haojie was dumbfounded and turned pale with fright. The 9 Yellow Tunes River Array was an ancient array that was used to destroy divine souls and bodies. However, it was so vulnerable in front of Zhang Tian. But he didn't know. The Red Phoenix True Fire was the most powerful divine beast fire in the universe. It could even suppress the 36 divine fires in the world. When it was refined to the extreme, it could burn the sky and destroy planets. There was nothing it couldn't burn, not to mention the array chi of the 9 Yellow Tunes River Array. Crackle. The originally dark clouds, chilly winds and black miasma permeating the air were instantly swept clean. There were no clouds in the sky and the sun shone brightly. Thank you, sect master of the Taichu sect, for saving us. Savior. This is the power of God. This is the power of heaven. In a blink, countless onlookers stopped running and knelt on the ground. They cried and worshipped Zhang Tian. How is this possible? Fire refines the sky and the red phoenix breaks the array. This is simply unparalleled divine might. Seeing this, Zhou Xian and the old monk of Huangjue Temple were shocked. They felt as if their faces had been slapped by Zhang Tian. They thought that Zhang Tian would definitely die every time he used the Dharma treasures and arrays of the preaching dynasty. But the result? They had never thought that Zhang Tian would be so powerful. They had underestimated Zhang Tian again and again. Kill him again. I don't believe that I can't kill you. Yin Haojie was shocked and furious. His red eyes were about to spurt blood. The array in his hand spun 9 times, trying to activate the 9 Yellow Tunes River Array again. Die. Unexpectedly, Zhang Tian had already put away the Red Sparrow divine body and shot up like a rocket. He instantly broke 10 times the speed of sound and charged towards Yin Haojie and the army. Yellow-scarfed strongman. Open the formation, open the formation. Yin Haojia's face turned pale with fright. He was so scared that he almost dropped the disc array in his hand. Activate the formation. Immediately, the yellow-scarfed strongmen roared and attacked. Within the military formation, the Sky Annihilation Formation, the Earth Scorching Formation, the Wind Howling Formation, the Ice Formation, the Golden Light Formation, and more than a dozen formation chariots were pushed out. Then they roared together and light filled the sky. The vast power of the formations attacked Zhang Tian. Strange phenomena appeared in the sky. The first formation was filled with lightning and thunder. The second formation was filled with howling winds and gathering clouds. The third formation was burning with fire. The fourth formation was freezing everything within 10 miles. And the fifth formation was turning black sand into blood. The power of each layer of the formation was shocking and could kill a golden core cultivator. Moreover, they were endless and they overlapped and attacked Zhang Tian from all directions. Open, open, open. Zhang Tian's black hair fluttered in the wind as he threw out one punch after another. Each of his punches was powerful enough to shake a mountain. Boom, boom, boom. A series of thunderous sounds were heard. Zhang Tian destroyed a layer of formations with a single punch and even broke 2 layers of formations in a row. He shattered the formation chariot and shook the yellow scarf warrior to the point of vomiting blood. In the end, even the 9 Tunes Yellow River formation chariot was destroyed, and he forcefully made a bloody path out of the formation. Swish! Zhang Tian flashed and appeared 100 meters in front of Yin Haojia. He looked cold and waved his fingers. Suddenly, a dazzling golden sword light, which was hundreds of meters long, slashed out horizontally like a knife cutting through water. Block it! Yin Haojia yelled and his face changed color. He had used a lot of energy to activate the formation and was already at the end of his rope. He took out his white axe and tried to block the attack. Yin Haojia can't hold on anymore. Save him. At the side, Jiang Baoweng let out a light shout. The god-beating whip in his hand struck out towards Zhang Tian, attempting to surround Wei to rescue Zhao. He raised his hand and tried to grab the Wuji apricot yellow flag from Jiang Feibai. He then swept it towards Yin Haojia. The god-beating whip enlarged and became 100 meters long. It was 10 times stronger than the golden whip passed down by Grand Preceptor Wen. It was like a giant pillar that covered the sky and smashed towards Zhang Tian. Rise! Zhang Tian's dantian rumbled. The earth-winged dragon's body burst out. It held the myriad stone cauldron and swung it like a giant mountain. At this time, the earth-winged dragon was still wrapped in the god-suppressing chains. It sealed its cultivation and hid its fake elixir. It was only 100 meters tall. However, its power was extraordinary. It smashed the god-beating whip a few thousand meters away and smashed a mountain. This is the winged dragon? Its power is so terrifying. Jiang Baoweng noticed that the runes on the god-beating whip were worn out and there were even a few cracks. He was scared out of his wits. Swish! The Wuji apricot yellow flag wrapped around Yin Haojia only blocked Zhang Tian's Gung Jin sword light for a moment before it was torn apart and fluttered away like a rag. Jiang Baoweng couldn't help but take a few steps back. His face was as pale as paper. His Dantian's divine sense suffered a backlash and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He couldn't help but feel as if he had seen a demon. The Preaching Supreme Treasure God-Beating Whip and Wuji Apricot Yellow Flag are actually not Kong Teichu's opponent. This kid is comparable to an ancient god. What kind of cultivation is he? These 2 treasures were famous existences in the investiture of the gods' era. They had killed countless experts. Even in the ruins of immortality they could be called quasi-true weapons. Yet they couldn't stop Zhang Tian. However, Jiang Baoweng's action also gave Yin Haojia the time to dodge and the others time to attack. Kong Teichu Dai! Ji Shiqi shouted. With a flip of his palm, a shiny golden mirror appeared. This mirror was the size of a wash basin and emitted a scorching golden light. It suddenly attacked and soared into the sky, turning into a comet that shot towards Zhang Tian. King Wen's Tai Chi 8 trigrams mirror. Everyone was shocked and their eyes were filled with shock. According to legend, this treasure was personally forged by King Wen. Its magic power was enormous and vigorous. It could expel evil and suppress evil, kill demons and subdue demons. With this mirror, the Ji family was ranked second among the 4 famous families. It was even stronger than the famous families of Yinshang and was only slightly inferior to the Yu family. Crack, crack. The protruding spherical surface of the mirror contained yin and yang fishes. carried Yin and embraced Yang, hugging each other and revolving forever. As soon as this mirror appeared, golden light shone brightly. Yin and Yang alternated and spun non-stop, giving birth to 4 divisions. The 4 divisions spun, urging the power of the 8 trigrams of heaven, earth, wind, thunder, water, fire, mountain and lake to attack Xianxia. Suddenly rumble. Colorful light pillars pierced through the void, alternating with each other and changing endlessly as they shot towards Xianxia. Rumble. Wherever the light pillars shot, huge pits of 5 to 6 miles in diameter appeared on the ground. Mountains collapsed one after another. A light pillar shot out was comparable to the bombardment of a cluster missile. It wasn't much weaker than a nuclear weapon. At this moment, Zhou Xian and the old monk of Huangjue Temple, as well as many famous preaching families and reclusive royalty, were shocked speechless. The power of such a Dharma treasure had exceeded their imagination. Go. Meanwhile, Yu Wenden's gray hair fluttered in the wind. He performed the dipper steps and chanted a spell. He raised his hand and tapped the back of the giant bear's head. Then he soared into the sky and left the giant bear's shoulder. Rumble. Roar. The black bear puppet roared angrily. Flames spewed out from the soles of its feet. In the sky, it was as if a giant meteorite had streaked across. Flames erupted from the friction between its body and the air. The white turbulence of the air and the black smoke intertwined to form a long tail. It charged straight towards Xianxia. No one could describe the power of this black bear. Its solid and heavy body was like a falling mountain or a planet hitting the earth. Its giant paw slammed down towards Xianxia's head. Sky-trampling mountain-splitting palm. This was the palm attack that the armored black bear had accumulated over countless years. Countless years ago, it had used this palm attack to help Emperor Yu split open mountains and dredge rivers, controlling the Great Flood. Now, with the eruption of countless crystals, this palm attack was enough to smash an aircraft carrier and turn a city into dust. Yin Haojie took the opportunity to drive the 7 fragrances chariot and retreated a few hundred meters in an instant. He wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and sneered. Hee hee, Kong Teichu, you can't kill me after all. I'd like to see how long you can be so fierce. Humph. Petty tricks. At times, Jiang Tian was like an old ape circling around a tree. At other times he was like a white crane soaring in the sky. He moved quickly and easily dodged the light pillars of the Tai Chi 8 trigrams mirror. He approached the black bear puppet and finally raised his green jade-like fist and punched towards the armored black bear. At this time, Jiang Tian had not activated his Dharma power. Compared to the giant bear that was a few hundred meters tall, he was like an ant. This punch was also neither hot nor cold. It looked light as a feather. Humph, he wants to fight the black bear puppet with his physical body? He's courting death. Zhou Xian sneered. Even the old monk of Huangjue Temple laughed. Jiang Tian was too arrogant. This punch would be like scratching an itch. He might even be seriously injured. But when this punch was thrown, boom, the void trembled as if heaven and earth were in chaos. The sun and the moon were upside down. The bright golden fist aura shot up like a golden dragon dancing in the sky. The vast fist force crossed a distance of 1,000 meters and landed on the giant bear's chest. One could even see that where the fist force passed, black spatial cracks appeared in the void. He had broken through the void with his physical body. With a loud clang, the sound was like a huge bell that shook people's hearts. Everything within 100 miles trembled. With the giant bear as the center, huge white cloud rings spread out in all directions like water ripples. In the blink of an eye, they spread out to a radius of 10 miles. Wherever the overlapping rings of clouds passed, the earth would tremble like the skin of a drum. Trees would turn into fine powder and rocks would pierce through the air and shatter into pieces. At the moment when it was hit, the giant black bear paused. Its lantern-like eyes dimmed for a moment, revealing shock and disbelief. But in the next moment, under everyone's shocked gazes, the black bear puppet's chest, which was made of dark steel from the extreme north and could withstand nuclear weapons without fearing a volley of missiles, suddenly had huge cracks appear on its chest. The cracks spread rapidly and covered its entire body like a spider web in the blink of an eye. Then a huge fist mark with a radius of 10 meters protruded from its back. Boom! There was a loud noise. All of a sudden, the reaction furnace inside shot out streaks of sharp arrow-like light from the gaps between the puppets, quickly melting the almost crumbling shell into molten iron. Then the entire armored black bear exploded uncontrollably. Everyone was shocked. What? Even the armored black bear was blown up by his punch. How can he be so powerful? Yin Haojie, Jishichi and Jiang Yaoweng all sucked in a breath of cold air. The black bear puppet was also impossible. That's impossible. Even Yu Wendon was shocked as he roared in disbelief. Chapter 1249. Rumble. Loud muffled noises that sounded like a few nuclear explosions rang out. Flames soared into the sky and colorful mushroom clouds rose into the sky. Rolling pieces of iron and molten iron flew everywhere. The entire valley seemed like a typhoon had passed through. The area within a radius of 10 miles was instantly in a mess. The army of the Preaching prestigious clans was pushed into a complete mess. Their formation was thrown into disarray, and in the blink of an eye over 1,000 men were killed. Only a few masters of the famous sex and gold core experts could still stand in the void. How is this possible? Zhou Xian was so shocked that his legs went soft and he almost fell to the ground. The old monk of Huangjue Temple was also dumbfounded and completely speechless. Nothing is impossible with me, Kong Teichu. It's just a puppet. I can destroy it with a finger. Jiang Tian curled his lips and revealed a mocking expression. His gaze fell on Yin Haojie's pale face again. Retreat. Yin Haojie's heart was alarmed again. He screamed and hurriedly drove the 7 fragrances carriage to the side of the other 3 masters of the famous sections. This iron-armored black bear had once helped Emperor Yu deal with the flood and conquered the country. Even in the ancient times it was very famous. Even the sages of the ancient times could not do anything to it. However, at this moment, it could not even withstand a single punch from Jiang Tian. But it did not know. Even when Jiang Tian destroyed the black bear puppet with a punch, he was still using the thick earth god suppressing chain to suppress his cultivation. His cultivation was still only at level 3 foundation establishment. However, any of his divine bodies, even if he was only at the 3rd level of the foundation establishment stage, was still several times stronger than an ordinary golden core stage cultivator. Otherwise, how could he break everyone's supreme true weapons like cutting vegetables? A group of frogs at the bottom of the well. How would you know the ability of Kong Teichu? Yes, I am restricted by the Immortal Trap Great Formation and cannot use my peak strength. But why would I need to use my peak strength to kill all of you? Jiang Tian killed to his heart's content and laughed out loud in delight. But his speed was not slow. In a flash, he crossed a few miles and came to the top of the 7 fragrances carriage. He stepped on it. Brother Yin Haojie is in danger. Stop him. Let's attack together. Yu Wendon, Jishichi and Jiang Baoweng all shouted loudly. They were panicking and furious as they attacked together. Instantly, numerous strands of killing intent and magic treasure fluctuations that penetrated the heavens and the earth descended from the sky, striking to the point space trembled and gales whistled. Countless trees were bent and shattered, millstone-sized rocks fluttered about like snowflakes, and numerous terrifying cracks appeared on the ground. Too late. Jiang Tian clasped his hands behind his back. His white robe fluttered in the wind like a flag. However, a sharp killing intent flashed in his eyes. As the foot stomped down, a huge foot that was 100 meters long suddenly condensed. It was as if a giant spirit god had stomped down, bringing with it an aura that could destroy everything. Kong Teichu, how dare you kill me? Sensing the killing intent of this kick, Yin Haojie raised his head and shouted. His eyes were filled with unwillingness, hatred, anger, and madness. He waved the white axe in his left hand and grabbed the golden scissors that Yin Chaoga had thrown on the ground with his right hand. The scissors turned into 2 golden dragons and soared into the sky. After all, his cultivation was far higher than Yin Chaoga's. Although it was the same magic treasure, its power was at least a few times stronger. The 2 dragons were about 100 feet long and solid as if they were real. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws as if they could tear the sky apart. At the same time, Yin Haojie stomped his foot, causing the entire 7 fragrances chariot to shake violently. The ancient divine wood, the curtains, the golden hooks, and the countless pearls all erupted with a myriad of 5-colored brilliance, forming numerous layers of protective light barriers that wanted to block Jiang Tian's stomp. This 7 fragrances carriage had a great background. It was the carriage that Bo Yikao had given to King Zhou and Su Daji. It was rumored that it was the divine carriage that the Yellow Emperor had used to kill Qiyu. This carriage was made of countless strange wood pearls and pearls. It was engraved with ancient Dao patterns and could travel hundreds of miles in an instant. The most important thing was that its protective function was powerful. Even ancient sages and nascent soul powerhouses would find it difficult to break it. However, under Jiang Tian's foot, everything was useless. Under Jiang Tian's foot, the two dragons roared miserably and collapsed instantly like paper. As for the 7 fragrances carriage, after being stepped on, it sank dozens of meters into the ground like a meteorite and exploded. This kick finally landed on Yin Haojia's head. Boom, boom. Yin Haojia's head exploded. His tall and majestic body exploded into pieces, turning into broken bones and minced meat that scattered everywhere. Everyone was shocked and dumbfounded. The 7 fragrances carriage has been stepped on and exploded. Terrifying. It's too terrifying. Zhou Xian, the old monk of Huangjue Temple, and the onlookers were trembling all over. Cold sweat poured down their faces and they could not wipe it off no matter how hard they tried. Their eyes were filled with fear as if they had seen a devil. Jiang Tian broke the golden dragon scissors with one kick, stepped on the 7 fragrances carriage, and then stepped on Yin Haojia, a real golden elixir powerhouse. The power of a single kick was actually so terrifying. He was invincible. At this time the attacks of many Dharma treasures really came. Jiang Tian's face was indifferent. He raised one hand and 100 feet long golden palm soared into the sky, shattering all the attacks of the Dharma treasures. Do you think that I can't kill you because of the suppression of the immortal trap array and I can't use my full strength? Do you think that you are the chi refinement cultivators of the preaching dynasty and that your Dharma treasures are invincible? How would you know how powerful Kong Techu's cultivation art is? Jiang Tian put his hands behind his back and his eyes were as calm as the eternal sky. He was high above and looked down at the experts of the preaching dynasty. Yu Wenden's face was cold and he did not say a word. Bean-sized beads of sweat rolled down Jiang Yueng's forehead. His hair was messy and his chest was stained with blood. He was in a sorry state. His Wuji apricot yellow flag was destroyed and the Dao pattern of the deity beating whip was half destroyed by Jiang Tian's fist. Moreover, his Dantian and divine sense had suffered a backlash and were already heavily injured. Ji Shichi's hands that were tightly holding the Tai Chi 8 trigrams array trembled slightly. His entire body was tense as if he was facing a great enemy. How could this be? At this time, Ji Muxian only felt bitterness in his mouth and his face was full of disbelief. He never thought that even if Jiang Tian was suppressed by the immortal trap array, he could still fight against a golden core cultivator and destroy many preaching Dharma treasures. These were Dharma treasures that were similar to true artifacts. Which one of them was not passed down for a long time and which one of them was not powerful? However, he did not know that when Jiang Tian first set foot in Heavenly Star and Heavenly Kingdom, he did not condense a fake core. Didn't he still kill many golden core cultivators with his real foundation establishment cultivation? How can this kid be so powerful? At this time Ji Mai Jiang Feibai and the other descendants of the famous sects were shocked and full of disbelief. They began to waver and regret in their hearts. Originally, they thought that the masters of the preaching dynasty with many Dharma treasures from the God Investiture War would crush Jiang Tian in a matter of seconds. But they didn't expect Jiang Tian to be so strong, completely occupying an advantageous position, causing their famous preaching sects to suffer heavy casualties. Ji Mai and the others swore that if they could go back in time, they would not easily provoke Jiang Tian and make such a big fuss. Kong Techu won't really make a comeback, right? In addition to the winners, many of the reclusive royalty were also shocked. If he wins, we will all be in trouble. Zhu Xiaochen, Li Guangkou and the others were extremely uneasy. They felt a chill in their hearts from head to toe. Even the old monk of Huangjue Temple had a dignified face at this time. He quickly fiddled with the prayer beads and no longer had the slightest confidence. Jiang Tian completely crushed them. If he could kill Yin Haojie, at least killing Ji Shichi and Jiang Baowen would not be a problem. Perhaps only Yu Wenden could protect himself and have a chance to win with the 9 cauldrons. However, how could they protect themselves with reclusive royalty? Jiang Tian was someone who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance, and his ferocity surged. How could he let them off? Moreover, this time Jiang Tian could be said to be extremely benevolent. Reclusive royalty had provoked them to death. How could Jiang Tian be merciful? Kong Techu, you and I are both cultivators of Wuxia. Do we have to fight to the death? Jiang Baoweng's sleeves fluttered and he was as ethereal as an immortal as he asked in a deep voice. Kong Teichu, if you give up the position of the leader of the Myth Alliance to us now, I can forget about my son's death today and shake hands with you to make peace. Yu Wendon gritted his teeth and his face trembled as he said with hatred. This was already an extreme concession for him. After all, he could not live under the same sky as his son's death. How could he not hate Jiang Tian? You're just a bunch of clowns. What right do you have to control the Myth Alliance? Jiang Tian's eyes were indifferent, but his words were domineering. He sneered and said, I've said it before. After today there will be no preaching sects in Wuxia. Do you think I'm bragging? Jiang Taichu, don't be so overbearing. You've gone too far. Do you really think that the prestigious preaching clans are easy to bully? Before Yu Wendon could say anything, Yu Fenghua had already risen to the sky. Her face was as cold as ice as she shouted angrily, Kong Teichu, tens of thousands of us have gathered here. If we attack you together, do you think you can withstand it no matter how powerful you are? Besides, we have the 9 cauldrons that can activate the deity trap array. Once they are activated, the heavenly tribulation and heavenly punishment will descend. How much can you withstand? As soon as she said that, a surge of blood surged in everyone's heart and their eyes were filled with excitement. That's right. 2 fists can't fight against 4 hands. No matter how strong Kong Teichu is, he's made of iron. How many nails can he crush? The descendants of the preaching dynasty and the royal family are all at the foundation establishment level. There are tens of thousands of them. He's also at the foundation establishment level. Why should we be afraid of him? Zhou Xian sent a voice transmission and urged enthusiastically, but he didn't mean to attack. He was only encouraging the preaching sects and the overlords of reclusive royalty. Hearing that, the descendants of the reclusive royalty and the preaching sects were ready to attack. Waves of murderous intent were slowly released. What fellow cultivator Muxian said makes sense. Besides, the most powerful treasures of the preaching dynasty are the 9 cauldrons that can activate the deity trap array. The deity trap array was created by the ancient virtuous beings and it covers the entire earth. Its power is comparable to dozens of nuclear explosions. Even if Kong Teichu is made of iron, he'll be burned to ashes. The old monk of Huangjue Temple hesitated for a moment and said with a cold face. At this time their reclusive royalty had no way to retreat. They had made a big mistake and it was too late for regrets. After all, Kong Teichu was a mean and merciless person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Since they had already provoked him, they could only kill him. Kill. Kill, kill, kill. Today we'll trample on May. With tens of thousands of troops, I don't believe that he won't be trampled into meat paste. Today we'll attack together. We must kill this monster. Otherwise we'll have no way to live. Yeah, he said that he'll slaughter all the preaching sects. According to his previous personality, the reclusive royalty will be wiped out too. Hearing that, many preaching sects, reclusive royalty disciples, and tens of thousands of troops showed a crazed look. They shouted and their fighting spirit was surging. Mortals are mortals after all. Don't they know that no matter how many ants there are, they can be crushed with a slap when gathered together? Are you threatening me, Kong Teichu? It seems that if I don't kill some of you, you won't understand the cruel reality. You won't know how good you are in front of me, Kong Teichu. Jiang Tian shook his head and sighed. Suddenly, Jiang Tian's eyes turned cold. He raised his hand and grabbed Yu Fenghua, who was jumping the happiest, and flew across several miles in the air into his hand. Chapter 1250. Family Lord, save me. Yu Fenghua felt as if she had been sucked into a giant black hole. Even if she used her secret techniques and treasures, she couldn't break free at all. In the blink of an eye, she fell into Jiang Tian's hands. So what if I'm bullying you? Don't you know that those who bully others will be bullied by others? Jiang Tian grabbed her fair and slender neck, which felt smooth to the touch. He froze her in the air and asked coldly, "What are you doing? Isn't it too late to make peace now? Besides, you're not sincere and you're threatening me. If you want to stop the war, kneel down and beg for mercy." Tai Chu Sect Master. Spare me. Yu Fenghua was choked to the point that it was difficult for her to breathe. Her originally delicate and flawless face was suffocated to a purplish red. Her clear eyes were bloodshot and bulging, almost popping out of their sockets. Kong Teichu, stop it. Yu Wendon shouted and tried to stop Chen Fan. Why didn't you stop the preaching sects when they attacked my dojo? Zhang Tian sneered and ruthlessly slammed his palm down on the top of the woman's head. He did not show any mercy. Instantly Yu Fenghua's head exploded into pieces and his body exploded, turning into a rain of sparkling flesh that rained down. Yu Wenden was enraged. Yu Fenghua was one of the best disciples of the Yu family. He doted on her a lot, but she was beaten to death by Zhang Tian. Didn't you want to kill my disciples to force me out? Today I'll kill your juniors and let you have a taste of your own medicine. Zhang Tian flicked the non-existent dust off his finger. A mocking smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were indifferent. Let's kill him together. Yu Wenden was so angry that his finger that was pointing at Zhang Tian was trembling violently. Boom. More than a dozen gold core realm elders of the famous preaching sects rushed out like dragons and joined hands to attack Zhang Tian. Their dharma treasures were aimed at Zhang Tian. Although they were slightly weaker than the sect masters, they were still powerful figures. Their combined attack was comparable to the attack of a nascent soul overlord. However, they were no match for Zhang Tian. Piss off. Zhang Tian waved his hand. Smack. A crisp sound rang out like the sound of a whip being lashed. In an instant, boundless astral winds swept out like raging waves beating the shore, sending over a dozen elder-level powerhouses flying like scarecrows. Wah wah wah. These sect masters almost vomited blood. They were severely injured and their eyes were filled with shock. Zhang Tian didn't use any dharma powers in this attack. It was just his physical strength that caused the gust of wind to be so terrifying. The power of a wave of his hand is terrifying. Countless people screamed as if they had seen a demon. Zhang Tian took a step in the air, his body moving like a ghost. With the Tao of the Thunder Wings, he crossed a few miles in the blink of an eye and arrived in the middle of the army. He grabbed a young man who was in his teens and left calmly. It has nothing to do with me. Please don't kill me. The young man screamed in fear. Tears rolled down his face and snot bubbles came out of his nose. You're Yu Wenden's great-great-grandson. How dare you say it has nothing to do with you? You're holding a halberd and standing in the middle of the army to fight against me. How dare you say it has nothing to do with you? Zhang Tian broke the young man's neck and threw him towards Yu Wenden. Old man, catch. Little bastard, you're so cruel. Yu Wenden was flustered and exasperated. He gritted his teeth and his whole body trembled. This was his great-great-grandson. He didn't have much cultivation and only came to the battle to gain experience. However, he was still ruthlessly killed by Zhang Tian. This kid is so arrogant. Kill him. Zhang Baowing shouted angrily. He took out the deity-beating whip again and attacked Zhang Tian. Ji Shichi didn't say a word. The Taiji 8 trigrams mirror spun and swept in all directions trying to kill Zhang Tian. Swish. Zhang Tian took the first step and raised his hand. A golden finger aura shot out like a bullet from a sniper rifle and broke the bronze helmet of a young and beautiful girl. It flew out from the back of her head with a cloud of blood, brain matter, skull and helmet fragments. Bastard. Zhang Baowing roared in anger. This was his most beloved granddaughter. She was shockingly talented, but today she was killed by a single finger. Swish. Zhang Tian didn't say a word. He took the second step and waved his finger. Suddenly, 100-meter-long purple lightning blade swept out. It directly swept dozens of people in the Ji family's army into ashes. Many Dharma artifacts and armors couldn't withstand it and were all turned into ashes. The purple lightning blade was no longer an ordinary lightning. It had evolved to the extreme and contained the thunder of destruction. A thumb-sized bolt could kill a Foundation establishment overlord and severely injure a golden core cultivator. I'm so angry. Kong Teichu, if you have guts, don't hide and fight with me. You're the leader of the top orthodoxy. How dare you bully your juniors? Ji Shichi was so angry that he cried and shouted at Zhang Tian. His body was on the verge of collapse and his red eyes were about to spurt out blood. His dozen or so children were all dead. Nephews, grandsons, granddaughters, great-grandsons, they were all extremely talented people. They had spent countless resources of the clan to nurture them into the foundation-building realm, and they were the mainstays of the clan. But now, all of them died under Zhang Tian's blade. Even if they were lucky enough to win this battle, the Ji family would have no successor and their vitality would be greatly damaged. They wouldn't be able to recover without 100 years of cultivation. Your juniors don't know the rules and don't respect me as a senior. Of course I have to clean up your family for you. Don't thank me." Jiang Tian laughed heartily and flew out again, slamming down with his palm. Dozens of disciples of the Ji family were smashed into a bloody mist that spread out in the air. Just like this, Jiang Tian executed his movement technique and killed one person with every step he took. He was like a ghost that flashed past the attacks of magic tools and wandered between the army. He was ruthless and merciless. These descendants of the famous preaching sects had once made a move against his sect and suppressed his disciples. So there was no need to show mercy. But he didn't make a move against Yu Wendon and the other old fellows. He only killed the descendants and juniors of the famous preaching sects without restraint. He was inspired by the famous preaching sections. Sometimes torturing a person was far more terrifying than killing a person. Kang Teichu die. Jiang Baoweng's eyes were red from killing. He took the immortal binding rope from Jiang Feibai and used it to bind Jiang Tian. Instantly, the immortal binding rope became 100 meters long. It was like a giant python that soared through the sky and shot out like a golden snake. It was as if it had a spirit of its own as it coiled towards Jiang Tian. This treasure flickered with brilliance and was extremely dazzling. Moreover, its speed was extremely fast. It was simply like a golden bolt of lightning that leaped before Jiang Tian in the blink of an eye. "You think you can kill me with this broken thing?" Jiang Tian shouted angrily. He reached out his hand and grabbed a section of the immortal binding rope. Then he pulled it with both hands. Crack. Under everyone's incredulous gaze, Jiang Tian actually pulled the immortal binding rope into two from the middle. The Dao patterns and runes on it were annihilated. The immortal binding rope's light suddenly dimmed. It returned to its original size and fell to the ground like a dead snake. "Kang Teichu, you killed my son and destroyed my treasure. This old man and you are irreconcilable." Yu Wendon, Ji Shiqi and Jiang Baoweng were so angry that they almost vomited blood. They shouted in exasperation. At this time in the valley behind Mount Amei, according to Jiang Tian's divine sense transmission, Zhou Xian had already sent people to evacuate many of the engineering soldiers and onlookers. Only some Tianqing school disciples and experts from all sides of the cultivation world who could protect themselves were left behind. Although Jiang Tian was ruthless and merciless, he had never killed the innocent. Therefore this arrangement was made. In particular, he had always maintained a deep respect for the Wuxia soldiers. They, in times of crisis, showed their skills, fought for the country and the people, and shed blood and sweat to protect the weak. They were also heroes. And from the beginning to the end, the experts of the preaching dynasty didn't even look at Zhou Xian and the others. For such mortals, even if it was a battlefield star like Zhou Xian, they were just ants in their eyes. It wasn't even worth wasting a little bit of their true essence. At this time, Hong Yi and the people of the artifact refining hall also arrived and repaired and strengthened the protective array of the spirit guiding array. "Irreconcilable with me. Are you worthy?" Seeing this, Jiang Tian couldn't help but chuckle. He stretched his body and his dantian vibrated. His whole body emitted a muffled sound from inside to outside. He said coldly, "Those who have nothing to do with this, please disperse. I can finally attack without restraint and start a massacre." Then the wind and thunder wings appeared on his back. He flapped his wings and his body instantly broke through 2 times the speed of sound. Then he moved faster and faster like a human-shaped supersonic fighter jet, crashing into Zhang Yaoweng. "You Jiang fisherman will be the first." A dazzling bolt of lightning streaked across the sky. It was so fast that ordinary people would not be able to catch it with their eyes. When Jiang Tian streaked across the sky for dozens of miles, there was a roar that sounded like heavy cannons exploding in the sky. In a blink, Jiang Tian had broken 10 times the speed of sound and arrived in front of Jiang fisherman. Crack. A few thick earth chains in his dantian cracked. The red sparrow fake elixir jumped and Jiang Tian threw a punch. Even though Jiang fisherman was a golden core cultivator, he didn't have time to activate the god-beating whip. He didn't even have time to use his protective dharma treasures. Boom. The patterns on the god-beating whip let out beams of golden light and quickly expanded like a giant pillar. It swept towards Jiang Tian with a destructive energy. The god-beating whip had once dominated the Divine Lord battle. In other words, it had the power to kill gods. Normal nascent soul heavenly lords would have been forced to retreat. However, the power of Jiang Tian's punch with his divine body was extremely terrifying. Even though he hadn't reached the false core level and there were still a few soul-suppressing chains, the god-beating whip still couldn't withstand it. The Red Sparrow divine body was the most powerful divine body in the universe. Its fire had the power to destroy mountains and flatten cities. This punch was large like a small mountain and coiled with flames while boundless light shot out. It was blazing and dazzling to the extreme, and it was like a sun had appeared out of thin air in the sky and illuminated the clear sky for eternity. Clang. There was a loud noise. The deity striking whip was actually broken in the middle and rapidly emitted rolling flames. Even a portion of the Tao patterns were obliterated and melted into golden liquid that dripped down. The two halves of the whip flew to both sides for hundreds of meters before falling diagonally. He had destroyed the god-beating whip with one punch. After destroying the god-beating whip, the punch didn't seem to have dissipated at all. It continued to move towards Jiang Fisherman. Chapter 1251. What? Even the holy whip was broken in one hit. Jiang Baoweng's face was filled with shock and disbelief. He roared angrily and retreated as fast as a shooting star. At the same time he made a gesture with his fingers and activated many protective magic treasures. Jiang Baoweng was the descendant of Xianxia. The Jiang family had guarded the great Zhou dynasty for 600 years. They were in the final radiance of the setting sun after the destruction of the spiritual qi. They had plundered a lot and had many protective magic treasures. In an instant the armor, waist token, dragon tiger commander's seal, Daoist robe, and so on his body all erupted with a multicolored brilliance, forming layers upon layers of dermic energy shields. There were no less than a dozen layers and they enveloped him tightly. However, it was still useless. The giant flaming fist seemed to have a mind of its own. It drew a beautiful arc and chased after the shields. The shields suddenly caved in and formed the shape of a giant fist. Then they collapsed like soap bubbles. Bang! After being hit squarely by this punch, Jiang Yaoweng let out a miserable howl filled with despair and unwillingness. Then shocking cracks appeared on his body like broken porcelain. Then sparks flew and flames covered his body. His body quickly turned gray and black. There were ashes floating from the surface of his body. In the end his golden core also exploded uncontrollably, and his entire body exploded like fireworks, completely vanishing into thin air. In the blink of an eye. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Jiang Tian had already killed Jiang Baoweng with one punch. Hiss. At this moment, everyone took a deep breath. Taoist Muxian, I have to admit that we underestimated his strength. At this moment the Huangjue Temple's old monk's face was as pale as paper. He was very regretful. Kong Teichu was too strong. Even if he couldn't defeat Yu Wenden, he could still retreat easily. Then he would take revenge on them for the reclusive royalty. It would be the same. If he knew this would happen, he wouldn't have gotten involved in this mess. He killed Jiang Baoweng with one punch. Master, what should we do? Kong Teichu will take revenge on us. Yi Wei was so anxious that he almost cried. What should we do? Reclusive royalty disciples who had jumped out to oppose Jiang Tian were also desperate and regretful to the extreme. Their intestines were green with regret. Ji Muxian didn't answer. He was in a daze. His mouth tasted bitter and his hands trembled slightly. He had not expected such a situation and he was completely speechless. Li Wuji is bullying me. He was so ruthless. Why didn't he reveal Kong Teichu's true strength? Yes. He wanted to get rid of it. After all, I've offended Kong Teichu. A hint of understanding flashed through his eyes, and then a deep sense of fear appeared. His hands couldn't help but tremble. However, did he really believe that Kong Teichu was a match for the ruins of immortality? Even if Jiang Tian was invincible, what if the ruins of immortality invaded? This thought only flashed through his mind and he did not think too much about it. Now was an urgent matter. Ji Muxian knew that after this battle, if Jiang Tian was still alive, he would definitely not let him go and would settle the score with him. However, the 9 cauldrons haven't erupted yet and the Preqin families might not lose. No matter how strong Kong Teichu is, how can he resist the power of the immortal trap formation? Yes, Kong Teichu has killed too many people of the Yu family. Yu Wenden will take revenge no matter what. He forced himself to calm down. His trembling hands clenched into fists, and his nails dug into the flesh of his palms. He looked up at the people in the sky with anticipation in his eyes. In the sky above the valley, Jiang Tian faced the tens of thousands of Preqin troops and stood in the air. His expression was neither sad nor happy, as if killing Jiang Baowen was just like crushing an ant. Next it's the two of you. Jiang Tian had already retracted his mountain-like fists and suppressed and sealed the vermilion bird divine body again. He restrained his aura, put his hands behind his back and looked down at the two of them. Kang Teichu, do you really want to force me to use the splendid mountain and river cauldron to trigger the immortal trap formation? Do you really want to fight to the death with me? Seeing this, Yu Wenden's face turned pale and he asked angrily. I've said it before. After today there will be no preaching families in Wuxia. Fight to the death? I've said it before, you don't have the right to do so. Jiang Tian's eyes were indifferent as he said calmly. Ignorant child. Do you know the origin of the splendid mountain and river cauldron? Once it's activated, it has the power to destroy heaven and earth. Ji Shiqi shouted angrily. At the end of the ancient times, Star Destroyer descended, and the ancient earth was in chaos. After the sacred Emperor Zhongli entered the celestial land, Emperor Yu wiped out many traders San Miao and Nanman tribes. He established the Great Xia dynasty and ruled over the 9 continents in Wuxia. At that time, Emperor Yu had already realized that Star Destroyer was unstoppable. He kept devouring Earth's spiritual qi, and the ancient Earth's spiritual qi would be exhausted. It would turn into a dead planet and enter the age of chaos. In order to compete with star destruction for the little remaining spiritual energy and preserve Earth's luck and cultivation seedlings, he followed the plan he made with Emperor Zhongli back then and gathered all the ancient Chinese sages and rulers of all countries. They worked together to build the 9 cauldrons on Tusk Mountain, which was known as the Tusk Mountain Assembly. These 9 cauldrons are called the Splendid Mountain and River Cauldrons. One cauldron can absorb the spiritual qi of the mountains and rivers of a continent and turn it into heavenly Dharma power. Its Dharma power is vast and its destructive power is shocking. No one can predict its power. However, I'm afraid that it can destroy cities and countries easily. Is that so? Why don't you give it a try? Jiang Tian's expression was extremely calm. Ignorant. Ignorant. Do you know why Lord Yu hasn't activated the 9 cauldrons yet? Ji Shiqi was so angry that his whole body trembled. His eyes were about to spurt blood. According to the design agreed by Emperor Yu and Emperor Zhongli, the Tao pattern of the splendid mountain and river cauldron is closely related to the immortal trap Great Array. The 9 cauldrons won't be activated easily unless it's a world-ending disaster. Once it's activated, it represents the arrival of a world-ending disaster. The immortal trap Great Array will be activated, and the 9 cauldrons will be reinforced with endless heavenly might. It's called heavenly tribulation, heavenly wrath. Once it arrives, it will destroy the world. Countless people will be plunged into misery and suffering. This vast Wuxia might become a scorched land. You killed so many of our people, but I haven't used the 9 cauldrons yet. It's because I have the virtue of caring for the world. Yu Wenden also helplessly and sadly smiled, sighing. This battle was too tragic. He originally thought that he could crush Jiang Tian. However, the 2 masters of the famous sects had fallen, and almost all the young elites of the famous sects had died. Now he was actually forced to use the splendid mountain and river cauldron. This was also something he did not expect. The situation had already gone out of control. Kang Teichu, how about this? You and I will stop here. We will withdraw our troops and never mention revenge in the future. You can continue to revive the Earth's spiritual energy, and we will continue to live in seclusion. Ji Shiqi sighed helplessly. He wanted to soften Jiang Tian. This could be said to be a huge concession. After all, their losses were too great. The 2 masters of the famous sects had fallen on the spot, and countless magic treasures and disciples had been destroyed. Such a decision was also to swallow their teeth and blood. It's fine to stop here. I hate using violence to solve problems the most. However, all of you are talented and bold, and your cultivations are even more powerful. I'm worried. Jiang Tian revealed a pondering expression, but in his heart he was not willing to let it go. Both sides had already formed a life and death feud. It was impossible for them to shake hands and make peace. The famous sects of the preaching dynasty would not suffer great losses. They still had the strength to take revenge and the possibility of making a comeback. He smiled faintly and said, "How about this? You and I will establish a soul contract. If you attack me in Tianqing School first, you will die immediately. How about that?" Kang Teichu, don't go too far. When Yu Wenden and Ji Shiqi heard this, They almost vomited blood in anger. Their auras became unstable. Soul contracts and other techniques might be unfamiliar to ordinary people, but they understood them too well. Once a soul contract was established, they would be controlled by others without the slightest autonomy or freedom. They could only be Zhang Tian's slaves and lackeys. They were even worse than lackeys and slaves. They were like puppets controlled by Zhang Tian, walking corpses that were at his mercy. They were the Qi refinement giants of the preaching dynasty, peerless powerhouses with extraordinary statuses. How could they accept such an unequal peace proposal? Kong Teichu, don't be arrogant and look down on the people of the world. You'd better submit to the circumstances. Yu Wendin urged the 9 cauldrons and roared, under the so-called immortal trap array, all are ants. Under the clear sky, no one can resist the power of the immortal trap array. Kong Teichu, no matter how strong you are just a turtle in a jar under the immortal trap array, a small fish in a net. Then why are you still talking nonsense? The enemy that makes me feel most at ease is a dead person. Die for me. Zhang Tian's eyes were filled with cold, killing intent. His body was like a dragon as he stepped on the air and flew towards Yu Wendin and Ji Shiqi. Kong Teichu, you are courting death. Kacha. Ji Shiqi's sleeves fluttered and his hair fluttered like a waterfall. He was already mad with anger. He took out the Taiji 8 trigrams mirror and shot it towards Zhang Tian. The pillars of light were a few miles long. They pierced through the void and swept across the 9 heavens and 10 earth. Wherever they passed, the earth was torn apart and the mountains were shattered. The power was terrifying to the extreme. Fellow Daoist Shiqi, you always love to look at yourself in the mirror. You are really as cute as a girl. Zhang Tian laughed and said with a contemptuous tone, but he didn't show any mercy. He flipped his wrist and took out the sky-shaking bow and the sun-shooting arrow. Zhang Tian shot towards Yu Wendin and Ji Shiqi while he pulled the bow and arrow. With a creak, he instantly pulled the bow into a full moon and loosened his fingers. Swoosh! A sun-shooting arrow streaked across the sky towards the Taiji 8 trigrams mirror, accompanied by a ghostly howl. Chapter 1252. The power of this arrow was too shocking. A straight white air passageway appeared between the heavens and the earth. Strange black spatial cracks even appeared in the surroundings as if they could penetrate the sun and the moon, traverse the heavens and split the world into 2. Oh no! The moment Zhang Tian took out the bow and arrow, Ji Shiqi's eyes trembled. He was shocked and immediately changed from offense to defense. He stomped his right foot on the ground, made a gesture with his left hand, and pointed his right hand at the Taiji 8 trigrams mirror. Suddenly, the mirror shone brightly, and the vast power of the sun and the moon burst out together, forming a huge yin-yang tai chi diagram in the air. It spun rapidly and its power was vast and indestructible. Plang! The sun-shooting arrow with endless destructive power hit the yin-yang tai chi diagram. This tai chi diagram, which was powerful enough to fight against nuclear weapons, only lasted for half a second before it shattered. Then the arrow didn't stop and pierced through the Taiji 8 trigrams mirror. The Taiji 8 trigrams mirror suddenly collapsed, and the 8 trigrams became chaotic. The uncontrollable vast power pushed the endless fragments away. Oh my god! This bastard, he actually shot. Seeing this scene, Ji Shiqi's heart was filled with shock, fear and heartache. Tears almost flowed out of his eyes. This was a Dharma treasure passed down by his ancestors, and it could be said to be the ancestral artifact of the famous Ji family. Not only was it a Dharma treasure to defeat the enemy, but it was also a symbol of the family. It was very precious. But now it was pierced by Zhang Tian's arrow. He couldn't accept it. But he didn't know. Zhang Tian's sky-shaking bow and sun-shooting arrow were Dharma treasures from the mythological era. It was very likely that they were used by the ancient archer god Hou-Yi who had shot 9 suns. Its power was no weaker than King Wen's Taiji 8 trigrams mirror. Not to mention that Zhang Tian had infused it with endless thunder and vermilion bird fire, which increased its power by 10 times. Isn't it just a competition of Dharma treasures? Do you think only you have Dharma treasures? Then Zhang Tianzong let out a long laugh, knocked another arrow and shot 2 arrows at Yu Wendin and Ji Shiqi. Brother Wendin, hurry up and come out of the 9 cauldrons. Otherwise, the roots of the preaching dynasty will be severed today. Ji Shiqi angrily roared and fearlessly faced the 2 shooting sun arrows head-on, blocking them with his body. First he threw out a few magical treasures to intercept them. Then, like a fierce tiger released from its cage, he punched and kicked with unparalleled ferocity towards the two arrows. The magical equipment and the shadows of punches and kicks were powerful, but they could only stop the two shooting sun arrows for a few seconds. In the next moment, Zhi Shiqi's dantian was pierced by two arrows. His blood dyed the sky red and half of his body exploded. He fell to the ground, dead in an instant. "Father, give me your life." Ji Mai howled in agony. His eyes were about to spit fire as he charged towards Jiang Tian with a quasi-spirit artifact sword in hand. "Your father is dead. Don't call me father. I don't have a useless son like you." Jiang Tian was mad. With a strange laugh, he didn't stop and raised his hand to strike. Ji Mai and his sword exploded into pieces in the air, turning into countless broken bones and internal organs that fell to the ground. Seeing another old friend and a junior fall one after another, Yu Wending's eyes were filled with regret. He couldn't help but look dejected and his face became older. However, the sacrifice of Zhi Shiqi and his son was not meaningless. Taking advantage of these few seconds, Yu Wending had already cast a spell with his hair disheveled. He stepped on the Dipper steps and rose tens of thousands of meters into the sky. He also summoned the 9 cauldrons and activated his magic power. The cauldrons were filled with brilliance and were on the verge of exploding. Forget it. I didn't expect to be forced to use the splendid mountain and river cauldrons." Zhi Shiqi looked at the 9 bronze cauldrons floating above his head with a trace of regret on his face. The 9 cauldrons were made of bronze and had different shapes. On them there were picturesque mountains and rivers, beast faces, dragon and phoenix, cloud patterns, thunder and fire, and so on. However, each cauldron was as heavy as a mountain, overflowing with an ancient charm. It had the charm of nature as if it had crossed countless years and came from the primitive world. At this time, the 9 cauldrons had already bloomed with colorful brilliance. As if they couldn't bear it, they buzzed and even roared violently and crazily. I thought that if these cauldrons were to explode, they would be used to deal with the star races and the enemies outside to protect this beautiful world. I didn't expect that it would be you, Kong Teichu. Yu Wending's every word was filled with monstrous hatred. However, even though you, Jiang Taichu, were born in this world, you're cruel and inhumane. You're ferocious and easily annihilate clans, armies, and kingdoms. You're not far from destroying this beautiful world. This can also be considered a world-ending disaster. A trace of reluctance and regret flashed in Yu Wending's eyes. He had already made up his mind. The next moment he pointed in the air. With a boom, the 9 cauldrons shook together and turned into 9 rays of light that suppressed Jiang Tian. He suddenly stepped on the void and shouted as if he had used all his strength. "I'll borrow Wuxia's 9 prefectures." As soon as he said this, immediately, boom, the 9 cauldrons emitted endless light and a misty chaotic aura floated up and immediately turned into magnificent mountains and rivers with a radius of 10 miles and dozens of miles. They pressed down from 10,000 meters in the sky. It wasn't the suppression of 10,000 mountains at all. It was the suppression of a continent and not just one. Each cauldron turned into a continent and there were a total of 9 continents. On every single continent, there were towering mountains, silver waterfalls, ancient trees that towered into the sky, and great rivers that cut through the earth and flowed without end. The scene was incomparably magnificent, and it was a majestic and magnificent stretch of mountains and rivers. Splendid mountains and rivers. Once this phenomenon appeared, the world seemed to have changed, as if the 9 heavens and 10 earths had been created and everything had returned to the beginning of the world. It gave people a primitive feeling. The moment the 9 cauldrons exploded, the entire Wuxia trembled and the earth rumbled as if there was an earthquake. Is it an earthquake? No. Yu Wending triggered the 9 cauldrons, but, let's run. Immediately, countless people's faces turned pale and they exclaimed. They all ran out of their houses in fear. In fact, countless buildings within a radius of 100 miles around Mount Amei had collapsed. There was a real earthquake. Clouds rolled and gathered in the sky above Wuxia. Heavy rain poured down and thunder rumbled. Strong winds blew on the earth as if a typhoon had passed through. In many coastal areas, huge waves that were 100 meters high suddenly appeared on the originally calm sea, which could almost overturn fishing boats and huge ships. Even a few extinct volcanoes thousands of miles away in the northwest suddenly erupted. Magma that was dozens of meters high spewed out and flowed 10 miles away. The scene was shocking. This is the power of the 9 cauldrons. I'm afraid Wuxia will suffer a great loss this time. Some hidden old monsters looked in the direction of Mount Immerse with a hint of horror and sighed deeply. Yes, the 9 cauldrons absorbed the endless spirit qi of the ancient 9 states in Wuxia and were refined by the Yu family for more than 10,000 years. Who can resist its power? Even the gods of the ancient times can't resist it. Zhou Xian had already retreated 100 miles away. He stood on his flying sword and looked at the scene from the sky. He sighed and said, "No wonder the Yu family has been suppressing Kunlun for thousands of years. I was still a little unconvinced, but now I'm completely convinced." Around him, the old monk of Huangjue Temple and many powerhouses also nodded. Their eyes were filled with endless admiration and envy. The 9 giant cauldrons penetrated the heaven and earth. They could see it with their own eyes from so far away. They could feel the intense mana fluctuations and the suppressive power. This was not the power of the human world. It was as if the ancient gods had come back to life. Many descendants of the famous preaching families were full of confidence. The suppression of the power of the 9 states was not something a human could resist. No matter how strong Kong Techu was, he had not become an immortal or a god. He was still immortal. How could he resist the power of heaven and earth? Many descendants of the reclusive royalty such as Li Guangkou and Zhou Xian were delighted. They felt that they had made the right bet. At the same time, in the sky above the valley where the spiritual guiding array was located at the back of Mount Immerse. Yu Wenden, do you know that earthquakes and volcanic eruptions have occurred in Wuxia? Thousands of innocent people have died. Stop. Zhou Xian, who already knew the situation outside, shouted with a pale face. Fellow Daoist Wenden, why do you have to do this? As long as you are loyal to fellow Daoist Taichu, the divine soul contract is just a decoration. Fellow Daoist Taichu will not act recklessly. Senior, if you continue to kill, you will also suffer from the backlash. I'm afraid that you will use up all your mana and lifespan. Yingying Laozu and Yi Tianren tried to persuade him. Jiangtian, be careful. Huang Linger's face was filled with fear and worry. Her tears fell like rain. She clenched her fists tightly and her delicate body trembled uncontrollably. This is a magical artifact refined by Emperor Yu himself. The splendid landscape anomaly? It's too powerful. Lord is in danger this time. Let's go together. Get rid of this old man. True Dragon Patriarch Old Relai Lotus, Mingi and Ta Kong, who had rushed over, rose into the sky like dragons. Their fighting spirit was like a tide as they stood side by side with Jiang Tian. Chapter 1253. Back then, Emperor Yu and Emperor Xing were equally famous. One led the human race and the monster race to protect the new Earth, while the other was a space wanderer who opened the ruins of immortality. The 9 cauldrons that Emperor Yu created with the help of many ancient eras' almighty powers could be called true weapons. They were much more powerful than spiritual treasures. Back off. Once you unleash your power, the immortal trap array will be activated ahead of time. You'll all die. Seeing the 4 nascent soul old monsters following him, Jiang Tian was sure that these 4 old guys could be of great use, but he didn't show it. Kong Techu is indeed powerful. This old man is regretting asking people to stop him from recovering his spirit qi. In the sky, Yu Wenden looked down at Jiang Tian and shook his head with a wry smile. Suddenly his eyes became serious and he said with a sad voice, "But he, Jiang Taichu, killed my beloved son, slaughtered my heirs and nearly wiped out my Yu clan. He disgraced my name and bullied my Qin clan. 3 of my best friends also died in his hands. This hatred is as deep as the ocean." His shout was like a clap of thunder. "If I, Yu Wenden, don't avenge them, how can I face my dead friends and relatives? How can I face the ancestors of the Qin dynasty?" Zhou Xian, listen carefully. Those people who died unjustly can't be blamed on me, Yu Wending. They can only blame Jiang Taichu for not knowing when to stop enforcing me. What a pity. Jiang Tian waved his hand and asked the 4 nascent soul old monsters to back off. He put his hands behind his back and looked at the 9 continents above him with a regretful expression. The splendid mountains and rivers were formed by gathering the ancient spirit qi into the 9 ancient cauldrons. At this time the power was shocking and terrifying. Indeed, the 9 cauldrons were far more powerful than 100 nuclear weapons. If it hit the mortal world, it could destroy at least 1,000 miles and destroy a small country. Ji Shichi was not exaggerating when he said that it could destroy cities and countries. However, the one using these cauldrons was not an ancient deity or a virtuous paragon, it was only Yu Wending who was at the Gold Core realm. With his spiritual power he could only activate the 9 cauldrons once. He couldn't even activate all 9 cauldrons. Only 3 of the continents were relatively solid. The other 6 continents were already very weak and ethereal. Furthermore, once the 9 cauldrons' dermic powers were used, they would all be used up in one go and become ordinary items. If Yu Wending wanted to use it again, it was almost impossible, because he did not have the ability to gather the scattered and dried up spirit chi again. If you had attacked me a year ago, I'm afraid that I would have had to use my trump card to break this technique. But now, Zhang Tian shook his head disdainfully and sighed. Back then Zhang Tian hadn't condensed his false core yet. In order to kill sacred ancestor Qiliao, who was at the nascent soul realm, he had forcefully pulled open the heaven-shaking bow. The price he had paid was that he had been severely injured and his blood had dried up. It took him more than a month to recover his peak cultivation. But now Yu Wending was facing Zhang Tian, who had formed 6 fake cores and had 6 divine bodies. Even the 1000 Buddha relic pagoda, the treasure of West Earth, couldn't hurt Zhang Tian, let alone the 9 cauldrons. Kang Teichu, you're still so arrogant even now. Do you know that you're going to die? Yu Wending's face was extremely serious. His gray hair fluttered in the air and his eyes shot out lightning bolts. His sleeves fluttered as he stepped forward and formed a seal with his hands with difficulty. He was desperately controlling the 9 vast continents to suppress Zhang Tian. Then his body trembled and let out cracking sounds. His body seemed to be unable to withstand the enormous earth spirit chi. Blood kept dripping from the corner of his mouth, but his sleeves fluttered and his energy was extremely strong. He kept forming seals with his hands and pressing them down. Every time he pressed his hands down, there would be violent dermic powers. Electricity would appear around him and the wind would howl. The world would change color and become chaotic. Kang Teichu die. In the end he pressed down the last seal. Suddenly, the 9 splendid mountains and rivers pressed down on Zhang Tian from a few thousand meters in the air like Mars crashing into Earth. Before the 9 continents arrived, the violent pressure had already arrived. At that moment the earth trembled and huge gullies a few meters wide appeared. The mountains shook and huge rocks rolled down as if there was a magnitude 9 earthquake. Countless huge trees were broken and fell. Then they cracked and turned into wood chips and powder. Countless large rocks flew in all directions and exploded in the air. That's terrifying. At that moment Cao Shixiang, Cao Jinjiao and the other military personnel had already dug into the bunker 100 meters underground that could withstand the penetrating missiles. However, the huge bunker made of special cement was still shaking and cracking. Kang Teichu, I'll use this splendid mountains and rivers to test your supreme dermic powers. Yu Wending shouted. He staggered and his body was shaking. Every time he spoke his energy weakened a little and he spat out a mouthful of blood. In the end his face turned pale and his shirt was soaked with blood, but he didn't feel sad at all. Instead he was full of joy. Jingna, my friends, I've avenged you. I've finally gotten rid of Zhang Taichu, who is a threat to the common people. Yu Wending believed it. No one in the world could get out of the splendid mountains and rivers, unless the ancient deities woke up and Zhang Tian was a nascent soul cultivator. But apparently Zhang Tian wasn't. Besides, even if he was a nascent soul cultivator, would he dare to use it? The deity trap array immediately triggered the tribulation and he would die even more miserably. He was exhausted both physically and mentally. He opened his heavy eyelids and wanted to enjoy the scene of Zhang Tian being crushed into pieces by the 9 splendid mountains and rivers. But he had never thought that he would see an unbelievable scene. Zhang Tian's face turned cold. His dantian rumbled and a few thick earth god suppressing chains exploded at the same time. The fake elixir of the flying dragon in his dantian jumped and he swayed, turning into the flying dragon divine body of 1,000 feet tall. A flying dragon divine body. No, it's 10 times or 100 times more powerful than a flying dragon divine body. What kind of dharma form is this? A deity puppet or dharma self in one? Aren't you afraid of the deity trap array's tribulation? Yu Jingnan widened his eyes in disbelief as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over his head. Tribulation and tribulation? Let me see how you're going to destroy me. Zhang Tian with the flying dragon divine body said with a thunderous voice. His eyes shot out divine lightning and his body was as mighty as a dragon. Under Yu Wending's incredulous gaze, Zhang Tian leaped up and grabbed the myriad origin stone cauldron from his dantian. He swung it like Pangu swinging a giant axe to cleave apart the chaos. He smashed it towards the first layer of mountains and rivers. At first, the myriad stone cauldron was only a normal size. However, as Zhang Tian swung it, it rapidly expanded to a height of 1,000 meters. It was like a giant pillar that soared into the sky like a meteor, heavily smashing into the first layer of splendid mountains and rivers. Boom! 10,000 meters above Mount Amei, the ground of the first layer of the splendid mountains and rivers shook violently. When the myriad origin cauldron came crashing down, a massive fissure appeared on the surface of this continent. Mountain peaks collapsed, rivers twisted, magma erupted from the ground, and the earth began to shake violently like waves. Soon after, the myriad stone cauldron directly pierced through the continent from the bottom. It emerged from the surface and streaked across, causing the continent to explode uncontrollably. It was as if dozens of nuclear weapons had exploded at the same time. Boundless airwaves rushed into the distance and formed huge white rings of clouds in the sky. Above it, colorful mushroom clouds appeared one after another. It was an extremely magnificent sight. These white rings of clouds expanded like ripples. They expanded and spread out for 10 kilometers, 100 kilometers and 1,000 kilometers in an instant. Everyone saw this scene. This is too shocking. Terrifying. It has the power to destroy the world. Such a powerful and heaven-defying celestial weapon attack was still broken by Kong Teichu. The whole of Wuxia was shaken. More than 1 billion people heard the terrifying explosion and saw this shocking scene. They couldn't help but talk about it and couldn't calm down. How is this possible? Even the splendid mountains and rivers can be broken. Many famous preaching disciples, reclusive royalty experts, and disciples were thrown off their feet by the impact of the rings of clouds. They cried out in shock like cats that were burned by fire. Could this kid be the reincarnation of an ancient true god? Even Zhou Xian was stunned. His eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. The old monk of Huangjue Temple also felt his heart skip a beat. He was extremely shocked and felt a chill all over his body. He couldn't stop trembling. The higher one reached their level, the more secrets they knew. They could sense the vastness and greatness of the heaven and earth's powers. At that moment, they understood what Zhang Tian's strike meant. One had to know that the splendid mountains and rivers was formed when ancient paragons like Emperor Yu used their overwhelming dermic powers to absorb and condense the spiritual energy of a state. It contained the power of famous mountains, rivers, and vast territories. It was all-encompassing and unshakable. However, it was still broken by Zhang Tian. At that moment, Zhou Xian and company felt that Zhang Tian was the reincarnation of an ancient true god. It was as though Pangu had been reborn and Gonggong had reappeared. Such a power that could shake the world was something they could only look up to and worship. They didn't dare to have any thoughts of competing with him. Our Lord's strength is just too powerful. The might of his divine body is actually so terrifying. Even if our Lord were to arrive in the ruins of immortality, he would still be considered a powerhouse. He would definitely be able to wrestle with that old villain, the Ruins Emperor. The three old monsters, Voidwalker, True Dragon, and Mingi, felt their hearts race as they watched. They felt giddy and excited, yearning to ascend to the heavens with Zhang Tian and fight the 9 cauldrons together, tearing apart the land masses that blotted out the sky. Kill, kill, kill. Kill this bunch of clowns that don't know what's good for them. Kill them all. Lian Xing's eyes widened in anger as he revealed a ferocious look as he roared loudly. Boom. The destruction of the first splendid mountains and rivers had already turned into chaos. From everyone's point of view, they could no longer see Zhang Tian's figure. All they saw was a towering mountain peak in the middle of the second splendid mountains and rivers. The plains had turned into mountain peaks and the mountain peaks had sunk into lakes. The land masses had been pierced, destroyed, and cracked. The mountain peaks that suddenly appeared were none other than the myriad stone cauldrons. At the next instant, the splendid mountains and rivers exploded once again. Following that boom, the rest of the continents, which seemed vague and not solid enough, were broken by Zhang Tian one after another. All of this only took a few minutes, and the huge cloud ring had already expanded to cover the entire Wuxia. It was even spreading outwards, rushing towards Asia. The cloud ring's speed of expansion had already broken the sound barrier and was comparable to the shockwave of a nuclear bomb. If there was a fighter jet in the sky, It would also be torn into scrap metal. Dong. Under Yu Wenden's incredulous gaze, Jiang Tian stepped into the air and walked out of the 9th splendid mountains and rivers that had collapsed. He ascended to the sky and looked down at Yu Wenden. He asked coldly, "Yu Wenden, are you convinced now?" Chapter 1254. Behind Jiang Tian was an ocean of chaos. Colorful miasma was rolling and rolling, and huge thunderbolts were zigzagging in all directions. Vast amounts of spirit chi were squeezing, tearing, and spinning, covering the sky and the sun. The scene was chaotic and magnificent. And yet Jiang Tian was wearing a white robe and his hair was neat. He was as handsome as a god. Apparently he still had energy left. He's too powerful. Down below, Ancestral Patriarch True Dragon and the other nascent soul cultivators looked at Jiang Tian with admiration. They were dizzy and their minds were in a trance. The power of the splendid mountain river formation phenomenon was too vast and majestic. They knew they wouldn't be able to resist it and would be crushed immediately if they were in it. And yet Jiang Tian had broken it in just a few minutes. "I can't believe you're so powerful that you can break the 9 levels of the splendid mountain river. Since things have come to this, Yu Wenden, admit defeat." In the sky, Yu Wenden smiled with a pale face. At this moment his entire body was dyed with blood, and his originally straight figure had already bent down. He coughed endlessly and was weak, and his white hair trembled slightly. He'd already exhausted all his magic energy and true essence, causing him to seem like a candle in the wind that was on the verge of death. But a second later, this deity trap array isn't just used to restrict the level of cultivators. It's also prepared to kill invaders from space and extraterrestrial civilizations. This is the power of heaven. It can even kill nascent soul cultivators and soul formation cultivators. Can you resist it, Kong Teichu? Before he finished, "It's here." Jiang Tian suddenly raised his head to look at the sky. His pupils shrank and a trace of seriousness appeared on his face. At this moment he could already feel a vast suppressive and murderous force coming from the depths of the sky. That energy was extremely powerful and frightening, as if an ancient divine king had woken up or a divine beast was showing off its power, suppressing Jiang Tian. It was 10 times more powerful than the 9 levels of the splendid mountain river and more terrifying than the thunder tribulation Jiang Tian had faced when he broke through to the golden core level in his previous life. It was comparable to the heavenly tribulation when he was a nascent soul cultivator. The heavenly tribulation of the deity trap array is here. The wrath of the heavens has arrived. This power was very obvious. Not only did Jiang Tian feel it, even Zhou Xian and the others who were dozens of miles away could feel it. This power was very mysterious. It densely covered the surroundings and appeared in all directions. They felt as if they were trapped in cement and it was difficult for them to even move their fingers. The pressure grew stronger and stronger. His internal organs felt like they were about to explode, and the bones in his body creaked as if they were about to shatter. However, the surrounding grass and trees were not damaged at all. Even the air was normal. In a village at the foot of the mountain, a group of dirty children stared at the sky with their eyes wide open, but they were safe and sound. It was obvious that this was a type of magical power confinement and attack. It possessed some kind of spiritual intelligence and was not pure energy. It was not an indiscriminate bombardment. It was only aimed at suppressing and killing cultivators. Moreover, the most frightening thing was that Zhou Xian and the rest realized that the aura in their bodies had been completely sealed and they couldn't circulate it at all. Not to mention resisting, Zhou Xian and the others couldn't even escape. One after another they fell to the ground in a sorry state. "Kong Teichu, you're dead meat." However, Zhou Xian and the rest didn't have the slightest fear. Instead they looked at the depths of the sky with ecstasy. This meant that Jiang Tian would definitely die this time. At this moment there was an obvious change in the depths of the sky. Huge black spatial rifts appeared in the sky, and beams of colorful light with long tails rushed out of the rifts, shooting toward the earth like comets. Mighty heavenly might? It's just a mere confinement formation. What kind of heavenly might is this? Even if heavenly might wants me to die, I'll fight it. Seeing this, Jiang Tian's eyes flashed with a trace of determination. His hair and long robe fluttered in the wind. He straightened his body like a peerless heavenly sword unsheathed, brimming with an extremely sharp aura. Crack, crack. After a few crisp sounds, all the thick earth god suppressing chains broke. The 6 fake elixir cores jumped at the same time. His dantian rumbled and a vast power like magma gushing out and a rocket launching, soared into the sky from Zhang Tian's body and spread out in all directions. Since Zhang Tian had already triggered the immortal trap formation, there was no need to suppress his cultivation. He just needed to crush him. Boom. Yu Wendon was the first to bear the brunt of the impact. He was sent flying several kilometers away, vomiting blood and breaking countless bones and tendons. When these rays of light reached an altitude of 20,000 meters, they suddenly drifted away and turned into billowing clouds and mist, rolling and surging. Some of the clouds and mist were dark red like blood, while some were dark gray. It gave people a complicated feeling of a bloody massacre and a tragic death. In the depths of the clouds and mist, two bright rays of light that seemed to be able to penetrate one's mind flashed and flashed, looking at Zhang Tian with murderous intent. This is the array spirit of the immortal trap formation. It is not the divine soul of a person or any other creature. It is formed by the obsession and infinite killing intent of the ancient sages who sacrificed themselves. After a long time, it has gained intelligence and can kill all the powerful cultivators in the formation. Yu Wendon took the opportunity to dash into the distance with a hideous smile. In his eyes, Zhang Tian was already a dead man. Years ago, when the ancient sages fought against the invaders from other planets, their friends, comrades, and teachers fell like rain. Their hatred and murderous intent were so great that it turned into a shocking killing intent that could trigger the heavenly tribulation. Kong Teichu, you can't stop them. Besides, the great Tao of Empress Hua, Fuxi the Great, Suiren the Great, Emperor Yu, Emperor Zhongli, Emperor Ao, and several other ancient emperors are also in this formation. They will kill you together. In the sky, the colorful clouds were rolling, and the two rays of light that could penetrate one's heart slowly receded. But then the gray clouds in the sky turned into a giant gray hand that was 100 acres wide. It grabbed at Zhang Tian's head. The deathly gray giant palm blotted out the sky like a huge dark cloud, filled with a tragic and austere aura. Thousands of white skeletons appeared, roaring ferociously. They were formed by the rolling death chi which could imprison and devour all vitality. Even nascent soul overlords couldn't resist it. Kill! Zhang Tian shouted. The golden divine body of gung metal rushed out of his dantian and crossed 10 miles in an instant. He jumped on the horse and slashed at the giant death chi hand. However, when the divine body of gung metal was a few hundred meters away from the hand, his dantian suddenly shook. The fake core wrapped in golden blood left his body and flew toward the giant hand. The gung metal divine body suddenly froze and fell from the sky. Even his eyes, which were like golden lanterns, became dull and dim. The consciousness of Zhang Tian's main body, which was poured into his sea of consciousness, was actually completely taken away. What a fierce array spirit! What a terrifying death chi! Zhang Tian felt a sharp pain in his head. The vital essence in his body became unstable and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He couldn't help but be shocked. Humph! The array spirit snorted disdainfully from the depths of the clouds. Seemed to be proud. It was like rolling thunder and the sound was heard from 100 miles away. Zhou Xian and the others heard it clearly. They couldn't help but be shocked. Their breaths became chaotic and they spat out a mouthful of blood. Then the gray giant held the fake core of gung metal and turned its palm into a fist. It smashed toward the divine body of gung metal as if it wanted to destroy it completely. Hihi Kong Teichu, you asked for it. Seeing this, Yu Wending smiled proudly. Even the Dharma form had fallen. What were the chances of Zhang Tian winning? It was almost certain that he would lose. Kill again. How long do you want to restrict Earth? Why don't you believe that your descendants will be stronger than you? Zhang Tian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. A trace of determination flashed in his eyes. He shouted angrily and the Thunder Slaughter divine body spread its wings and rushed out of his dantian. The Thunder Slaughter divine body, which was thousands of feet tall, rushed out. It was completely formed by the intertwining of pure thunder and lightning. The bright light illuminated the mountains and rivers for thousands of miles. It was as if a sun was blooming in the sky. What? There's a Dharma form. How is this possible? Yu Wending, Zhou Xian, the old monk of Huangjue Temple, and the others screamed in disbelief. Historically, golden core experts only had one golden core and could only unleash one Dharma form. However, Zhang Tian had a second golden core and a second Dharma form. This was simply unheard of. It was the first time this had happened since the beginning of the world. Eh. The two lamp-like eyes in the depths of the clouds also swept over and stared at the thunder-slaughter divine body in disbelief. Under their shocked gazes, the thunder-slaughter divine body flapped its wind and thunder wings and quickly approached the death chi giant fist. He clenched his hands and condensed a 1,000-meter-long purple thunder blade. He violently slashed the death chi giant fist like a knife cutting water. The death chi fist persisted for a full 3 seconds before the array spirit in the depths of the clouds let out a sorrowful roar full of unwillingness. Shocking cracks began to appear on the fist, and it collapsed with a loud bang. The Gingjin false stand fell. The eyes of the gung metal divine body that was about to fall to the ground suddenly lit up. Its thumb trembled and then it jumped up like a carp. It shot straight up and grabbed the falling gung metal fake core and pressed it into its dantian. Then it roared and rushed into the clouds with the thunder-slaughter divine body. They attacked the array spirit in the depths of the clouds. Chapter 1255. So powerful. The gaze in the depths of the clouds suddenly blazed. After a thunderous exclamation, the boundless red light and smoke turned into 2 blood-red halberds that were engraved with countless complicated Dao patterns and 10 times more condensed than the giant palm of death aura. The halberd was more than 1,000 meters long. It swept across the sky like a missile, releasing an iron-blooded murderous aura and power. It tore the space apart in many colors, moving at a speed that was 100 times faster than the speed of sound. Silently it dashed toward the 2 god bodies. These halberds are many times more powerful than the deity-slaying spear of the Superbrain Man. They're indeed the work of the ancient sages of Wuxia. Seeing this, Jiang Tian frowned and his eyes glittered. The halberds were extremely solid, far stronger than metals such as frost iron essence. They were also extremely fast. They could penetrate mountains and even spaceships made of titanium alloys with pure physical attacks. The runes on it were even more terrifying. They were continuously absorbing the energy of the deity trap array, which was much more powerful than the simultaneous explosion of 10 nuclear weapons. Even a soul formation overlord would have a hard time dealing with it. Kill. The divine body of gung metal was enraged. Golden light flashed in its lantern-like eyes. It waved its long blade and slashed one halberd down, while the other was knocked away. However, the divine body of gung metal was already covered in cracks. It spat out golden blood and was knocked dozens of miles away, smashing a mountain a few hundred meters high. The second halberd suddenly turned around and pierced into the dantian of the divine body of Lei Meng. The divine body of Lei Meng stiffened. Tiny sparks of electricity shot out and scattered in the air. At the same time, the eyes, like 2 lampposts, fell on Jiang Tian, as if they were confirming something. Then, after a sneer, bolts of lightning as thick as dragons erupted from the clouds and struck at Jiang Tian. "You're just an array spirit. You can't kill me." Jiang Tian laughed crazily. With a rumbling sound, a thick earth shield with a radius of a few thousand meters was formed, firmly blocking the lightning. Those lightning bolts continued to meander, as if they wanted to pierce through the thick earth barrier. That array spirit even extracted some of the magic power of the red battle spear, wanting to kill Jiang Tian's original body. However, that thick earth shield continued to solidify and thicken. Although Jiang Tian's body shook violently and he kept vomiting blood, he still laughed loudly. After a few flicks of the fingers, Lei Su's body seemed to be on the verge of shattering. Thick lightning bolts shot out from his mouth, but the fighting will in his eyes was getting crazier. Break! With a thunderous roar, thick thunderbolts rushed out of his dantian like giant pythons. They coiled around the battle spear that pierced into his dantian and tore it apart, turning it into ashes that scattered in the air. If the array spirit hadn't diverted part of the spear's energy, perhaps Lei Meng's divine body would have been shattered. However, since he wanted to kill Jiang Tian's true body, he had scattered his power, which gave the Thunder Slaughter godly body a chance to counterattack. Kill. The Thunder Slaughter godly body's eyes shot out lightning bolts and murderous auras that were hundreds of meters long. He had already skyrocketed and rushed into the clouds. "Which civilization are you from? Why are you so powerful?" With an indignant roar, the Thunder Slaughter godly body swept his blade. A lightning bolt that was thousands of meters long cut through the entire sky. Then, there was an earth-shattering explosion that was like a nuclear explosion. This time the entire earth trembled slightly. Hurricanes filled the clouds and the world was in chaos. The great Immortal trap formation has been destroyed? Ji Muxian's face was filled with shock and disbelief. He looked at Jiang Tian's blood-stained figure as if he had seen a demon. At this moment he felt that the suppressive power had disappeared, and the aura in his body was circulating freely. In fact, it wasn't just him. All the humans and creatures in the world felt that some kind of invisible restraint and suppression had been broken and disappeared. Some of the gifted people's powers were slowly awakening. They seemed to have endless power and their bodies were as light as a swallow. Some of them were in high spirits, feeling refreshed and full of fighting spirit. It was as if their brains had become smarter and more flexible. The great immortal trap formation had been destroyed. Jiang Tian was already injured. However, he felt that Jiang Tian was even more terrifying. What was unshakable was the ultimate powerhouse under the starry sky. The great immortal trap formation hasn't been destroyed yet. The formation structure still covers the earth, but the formation spirit is dead. An elder of the Yu family murmured with despair in his eyes. Everything has been settled. Kong Teichu still won. The old monk of Huangjue Temple had despair in his eyes. Reclusive royalty and the descendants of famous preaching sects looked defeated and his eyes were trembling. Let's run. Kong Teichu is a ferocious person. Next there will be endless revenge. Li Kuangkol said with a sobbing tone. As soon as these words came out, everyone felt a chill from head to toe. Where could they run to now? Even if they ran to the ends of the earth, could they escape Kong Teichu's pursuit? I heard that ancient gods live in seclusion in mysterious places like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon and the Egyptian pyramids. We can only go there and unite with them. The eyes of the elder of the Yu family suddenly brightened and a glint of determination flashed in his eyes. Just as everyone was about to leave. Suddenly, a roar filled with impatience and indignation came from the sky. Kong Teichu, do you think you've won? Are you gloating? No, the next battle will be even more terrifying because the divine soul avatar of the ancient emperors is about to arrive. As soon as Yu Wendon finished speaking, there was a loud bang. In the void universe, world-destroying thunder and lightning gathered. A huge black stone tablet, a 5-colored rock, a 1,000-meter-long sword, and a lusterless pearl with cloud patterns on it flew over like meteors crashing to the ground. In fact, there were many meteorites in the surroundings. Some of them were pitch black and some of them were emitting resplendent light, containing violent energy fluctuations. The largest of them had a radius of several thousand meters, like a huge mountain peak stretching across the sky. Empress was sky-patching stone, Fuxi the Great's darkest stone tablet, Zhong Li's sky-extinguishing sword that cut through the ancient path of stars, Ao Huang's Dinghai pearl. Oh my god, these are all ancestral artifacts. Now that they've reappeared, Kong Teichu, you're definitely going to die. Staring at those treasures, Yu Wendon was so excited that his body trembled. Then he knelt down in the sky and worshipped them sincerely. Those ancestral artifacts had a longer history than the 9 cauldrons of the splendid landscape. They were the Dharma treasures of the ancient emperors and were famous during the Age of Legends. How terrifying! These ancestral artifacts have reappeared. Kong Teichu is definitely going to die this time. At this moment, Ji Muxian and the others once again felt the vast and surging power as if a continent was pressing down on them. Their bones felt like they were going to explode. They prostrated themselves on the ground and shivered uneasily like quails in the cold wind. After a moment of panic, a sinister and complacent expression appeared. So the ancestral artifacts of the ancient Age of Legends have appeared in Wuxia. This is the real divine punishment and tribulation of the great immortal trap formation. It's even more terrifying than the formation spirit. I wonder if Kong Teichu can withstand it. If he can, he'll undoubtedly be the strongest person under the starry sky. At this moment, not only them but all over the world, the Holy See in the West, the Brahmin and Buddhism in India and Hongmeng in Wuxia, and even the old monsters and living fossils who had hidden themselves for various reasons, all felt the aura of destruction. They trembled and looked at the sky above Mount Imei in horror. At this moment no one could ignore such a scene. Many hidden old monsters came out and swept to the eastern hemisphere like lightning. They landed in Wuxia and observed carefully. In the countless years since the great immortal trap formation was set up, there were indeed powerful people who had broken through the 3rd level of foundation establishment and triggered the suppression of the great immortal trap formation. This was already known as the heavenly tribulation, but no powerful person had ever triggered the ancestral artifacts tribulation. Today's vast and boundless phenomenon and the heavenly tribulation formed by the great emperor's brand could be said to be unprecedented. They had never heard of or seen it before, so how could they miss it? Then they were shocked to see. Rumble. Numerous human-shaped thunderbolts suddenly burst out from the spatial cracks in the depths of the sky and arrived above the many ancestral artifacts. Every one of them was thousands of feet tall and extraordinarily mighty. They were completely formed by scorching thunderbolts and had a majestic aura that could suppress the world with one hand. They were 100 kilometers away from Xianxia and ordinary people couldn't see them. Even the sky immortal old monsters could only vaguely sense them with their immortal will. An ancient great empress walked out and landed dozens of miles away in a blink. She had a slim waist and full breasts. She stepped on a giant toad or frog and held a willow branch in her hand. She had a beautiful face and her clothes were fluttering in the wind. She was surrounded by a sacred and noble aura. Behind her, images formed by thunderbolts flashed in the sky. There was a willow branch that was stained with yellow soil to create humans, a turtle's leg that was cut off to gather 5 colored stones to mend the sky. It was as if history was repeating itself. Empress Hua. Yuwenden cried and kowtowed as if he had seen a god. She was one of the ancient gods in Wuxia's legends, Nuwa, also known as Empress Hua. She was worshipped by all the people of Wuxia and was extremely powerful and had a supreme status. A human-shaped thunderbolt. How can there be such a thing? This great immortal trap formation is so terrifying. At this time, even the true dragon patriarch and the other 3 old monsters were dumbfounded. Cold sweat flowed down their foreheads like a stream. They had also gone through the thunder tribulation when they formed their golden core. They had seen a lot of thunder tribulations caused by other people's thunder tribulations. However, they were only as thick as an arm. They had heard that only the peerless geniuses deep in the universe could trigger large-scale thunder tribulations. Furthermore, they had never seen or heard of lightning that had condensed into the shape of a human body and was of such a large scale before their eyes. In a blink, the 4 nascent soul-old monsters were at their wits' end. The human-shaped thunderbolt was too powerful. They would immediately turn into ashes if they rushed forward. The seal of the Tao. The ancient gods of Wuxia are so powerful. Just the seal of the Tao is indestructible after tens of thousands of years. Are they going to kill me? A glint of understanding flashed in Zhang Tian's eyes. Chapter 1256. At this moment, the imprints of the experts from the mythological era and the traces of the almighty experts from the ancient times reappeared. In essence, the immortal trapping great array recorded the various magical powers of the ancient great emperors and imprinted them in the world. To make an inappropriate analogy, the immortal trapping great array was like a huge video recorder that recorded the magical powers and great Tao of the ancient great emperors. However, this image was made up of terrifying thunder and energy. It even had some residual spiritual power and spiritual power. It was extremely powerful. Swoosh. Empress Hua's eyes were indifferent. She didn't say a word and suddenly waved the willow branch in her hand. Suddenly, endless thunder bloomed and zigzagged for dozens of miles. It was as blazing as a laser and as fast as lightning hitting Jiang Tian. Swoosh. A burnt smell filled the air. The chest of Jiang Tian's real body was penetrated. Green smoke rose from it and it was charred black. With the wound as the center, densely packed cracks instantly appeared on Jiang Tian's jade-like body, which was like a precious treasure. He nearly shattered. Endless thunder and lightning hit Jiang Tian alone. His black hair fluttered like a waterfall. His dantian rumbled and thunder burst out from his body, merging with the thunder-slaughter divine body. He was almost made up of pure thunder and lightning. Thunder and lightning countered thunder and lightning. He operated the supreme thunder control technique. Even if his bones and tendons were broken, he immediately obtained energy from the thunder and lightning to repair his body. The myriad stone cauldron floated above Jiang Tian's head and urged the initial chaotic energy. It protected Jiang Tian while being baptized and refined by the sea of thunder and lightning. In the sky full of thunder and lightning, Jiang Tian's body was shining with precious light and divine splendor. It was constantly dissipating and reforming. Bathing in the endless thunder and lightning, it was refining his immortal divine body and baptizing the real body's divine consciousness in his sea of consciousness. It was the cauldron that he would use to prove his Tao after being tempered. After a while, the imprint of Empress Hua waved the willow branch and put away the thunder and lightning. She looked at Zhang Tian silently. Could it be? Zhang Tian suddenly thought of a possibility and his eyes lit up. However, he didn't have time to think about it. Because with a buzzing sound, the 5-colored sky-mending stone shot out and suppressed Zhang Tian, who was in the air. Suddenly, endless light of calamity bloomed. The light of calamity was so powerful that even a tiny wisp of it could crush mountains and crush the earth. A powerful force of heavenly tribulation appeared between heaven and earth, instantly enveloping Zhang Tian. It was powerful enough to grind a nascent soul stage cultivator into dust. This force was soundless, shapeless, and traceless, yet it was 10 times stronger than splendid landscape, and it was fierce and strange to the extreme. It was as if the gravity of the earth had suddenly increased by 10 times or even 100 times. Zhang Tian couldn't help but fall. He had to activate the tempest wings to flap crazily in order to support himself. It was as if the surrounding pressure had suddenly increased 10-fold or even 100-fold, threatening to grind Zhang Tian into dust. Pa. All the thick earth god suppressing chains in Zhang Tian's lower abdomen exploded. He had to gather the power of the 6 different god bodies to resist. But still he vomited blood. Do you have to kill me? I'm fighting for mankind. What's wrong with that? Could it be that you want us to be cowards for generations to come and curl up in this small world? Zhang Tian roared and his eyes became fierce. The 6 fake elixirs in his lower abdomen jumped at the same time. The 6 different god bodies gathered into one, which was close to the chaotic god body. Endless aura spread out from the 108,000 pores all over his body. He didn't hold back anymore. He let go of his limbs and flew up against the sky. He held the myriad stone cauldron and fiercely smashed it toward the 5-colored sky-mending stone. Clang! The loud noise was like 100 nuclear explosions. This was a great annihilation. Tens of thousands of rays of multicolored light shot out and thunderbolts struck down. Mushroom clouds appeared in the sky and the space was blasted apart. Spatial cracks snaked out like black lightning and fragments of space slid down like glass. Swoosh! The 5-colored sky-mending stone was smashed thousands of meters away. All the mountain-like meteorites around it turned into dust and scattered in the air. The Phantom of Empress Wa didn't say anything. She just raised her hand and took the sky-mending stone back. She instantly retreated dozens of miles away and looked at Zhang Tian silently. At the same time, another human-shaped thunderbolt appeared in the distance. It seemed to be moving slowly, but it was actually moving very quickly. That person was riding a giant goat with curved horns on his head. He carried a fishing net on his back and held an 8 trigrams plate in his hand. He gently shook it. Suddenly, the simple and majestic black stone tablet shone with a dark light and released a powerful suction force. It was like a black hole in the depths of the universe, swallowing everything. It caused the surrounding space to distort and time to stop. Even the light became bent and colorful as it drilled into the stone tablet. It could even swallow the rays of light and couldn't escape. That stone tablet was a kind of dark matter that was extremely rare in the universe. It was very mysterious and had great divine powers. The swallowing divine powers was just one of them. Fuxi the Great has made his move. Yuwenden said in shock. I want to tear apart the sky that binds me and the human race. I want to break through the earth and destroy the planet. I want to revive the spirit chi. I want Earth to become the new core of the universe. I want the human race on Earth to become the most powerful race in the universe. I want the flowers of human civilization to bloom in the universe. I want the human race to expand to every galaxy. I Kongtachu have made this vow today. No one can change it. If the ancient gods stop me, I will slaughter all the gods in the world. If the ancient emperors stop me, I will destroy all of you. Zhang Tian's red eyes were filled with an unyielding fighting spirit. He roared like a dragon and shouted like rolling thunder. It shook the 9 heavens and 10 earths and spread across the entire Wuxia. Many people trembled and felt uneasy. He soared into the sky and fought crazily. He used all kinds of secret arts and didn't even hesitate to exhaust his true essence to forcefully use the laws of the immortal and divine worlds. After a lot of effort, he finally escaped the swallowing divine powers of the dark stone tablet. He soared into the sky again with a bloody mist and fought against Fuxi the Great Seal. His every move had the power to shake mountains and tear apart the sky. His punches and kicks seemed to be able to move mountains and fill oceans. He destroyed many of his ancestral weapons, tore apart the fishing net and destroyed the 8 trigrams. It wasn't that Zhang Tian was arrogant or that Zhang Tian didn't respect the ancient emperors. It was just that he felt a kind of pain, the pain of not being understood, and a kind of deep loneliness. He had been misunderstood by many when he revived the spirit qi. Many people thought he was a jinx and that he would lead Earth to eternal damnation. But he understood. The universe was like a dark forest with danger everywhere. It wasn't a declaration of peace when you cut off your own hands and feet, cut off your own path, and used the immortal trap array to envelop Earth and turn it into a dead planet with no spirit qi. In other words, this declaration of peace wasn't effective. The resources of the universe were limited. The strong had an endless desire to become stronger and expand. The strong would eliminate all advanced and backward civilizations and search for all possible habitats. If the immortal trap array was effective, if this declaration of peace was effective, Earth and the entire solar system wouldn't have turned into a dead zone 8,000 years later. Those who fell behind would be beaten up. This was a universal and unchanging truth. Only the strong could control their own fate. The weak could only wag their tails and beg for mercy. Even if they had a single breath left, their lives and fates were still in the hands of the strong. If they wanted you dead, you would die. There was no choice. In the face of threats, the only way was to become stronger and reach a higher level of civilization. There was no other path to take. Even more so, they couldn't give up on their own future and fight for the great Tao. All of a sudden, a sword radiance swept across the heaven and earth and slashed toward Zhang Tian's waist. There was nothing but a sword in the sky. Blood dyed the sky. Zhang Tian's intestines and stomach were torn apart. Dozens of his bones were broken and his body was charred. He staggered backward for dozens of kilometers. It was the seal of Emperor Zhongli. He was wearing a golden crown, a chain armor, and a heart-protecting mirror. He was standing on a giant golden dragon 100 feet long, holding the heaven-extinguishing sword that had once cut the ancient path in the universe. He was as tall as a mountain and his robe was fluttering like a flag. His face was handsome and his eyebrows were as sharp as heavenly sabers. His eyes shrouded Zhang Tian and were full of disdain. Emperor Xing, you should understand me. Tears of blood rolled down from Zhang Tian's eyes. He smiled sadly and said with a bitter smile, "You were the one who stopped the invaders back then and made the plan to wander the deity ground. But why are you attacking me? Are you trying to train me and temper me? Or are you testing me?" That was the first time he had shed tears of blood since he returned to Earth. He was too anxious. Qing'er and his daughter were in danger. "You think too highly of yourself." Emperor Zhongli roared in anger. He swung his sword at Zhang Tian like a lightning bolt. "I'm not training you, not tempering you, and definitely not testing you. We really want to kill you. You want to kill the ruins of deity? What's so great about the ruins of deity? What's so great about the twin stars of the South Gate? The real threat in this world isn't them at all. You can't do it. No one in this world can do it. You don't know how powerful the invaders are." His heaven-extinguishing sword was faster and fiercer than the previous one. He attacked like a storm and roared with a hint of crying. "Compared to their civilization, we're all trash and bugs. You'd better live like a bug. Even the ancient virtuous sages can't do it. You think you can? Who do you think you are? Revive your fucking spirit qi. Give up. Give up. Give up." Zhang Tian was beaten until he was dancing in the air like a marble. He rolled and crawled. His skin was lacerated and his bones were broken. His divine blood stained the sky and he almost looked like a bloody gourd. Suddenly, Emperor Zhongli swung his sword and sent Zhang Tian flying dozens of kilometers away. Then he raised his hand and grabbed Zhang Tian. He held Zhang Tian in his hand like an ant and shouted angrily, "Are you going to give up or not? If you can't, I can. If you don't want to do it, I'll do it." Zhang Tian roared. His energy center roared and 6 divine bodies burst out. They flashed and attacked Emperor Zhongli from all directions. Chapter 1257. It was a chaotic battle and the scene was shocking. If the world knew about it, everyone would be stunned. Lightning flashed in Lei Meng's eyes as he flapped his wings like a peerless heavenly blade. He held 2 purple lightning blades tightly and slashed down. The Qing Emperor's imprint had no choice but to let go of Zhang Tian and fight back with the peerless heavenly sword. The Earth Dragon divine body was not afraid of the lightning. Its huge tail covered the sky as it slammed Qing Emperor Zhongli's waist from the side. Qing Emperor was forced to retreat a few miles away. Dragon binding rope, sky blasting fist. The azure wood divine body was like a world tree that propped up the heavens. It was filled with the aura of the azure wood like the rosy clouds. The branches all over the sky turned into dragon-binding ropes that bound Emperor Sheng. Even if they were burned to pieces by the thunderbolts, they would not be pushed back. Another part of the tree branches coiled into a mountain-like fist and smashed the sky, smashing Emperor Sheng away for tens of miles. Sheng Emperor groaned. His lightning body dimmed and crackled with sparks. His eyes flickered as if he was in pain. Little kid, do you want to slay a god? Do you want to fight with the ancient monarchs? You're still too weak. Emperor Sheng swung absolute heaven sword, and it descended like a waterfall that was like a silver river. Swish. He merely flicked his fingers 3 times to slash the azurewood divine body into 2. But in just 3 flicks of his fingers, the Gongjin divine general had already arrived. Time slashes heavenly gods. The blood essence of the Gongjin divine body surged. The Gongjin divine body leaped forward and slashed at Zhongli's neck as if it could control time itself. Crack. More than half of Sheng Emperor's neck was severed. Broken bones, minced meat and blood splattered out. Even a nascent soul expert would die under this slash. But this was not the real Sheng Emperor. It was just a Dao imprint formed by the remnant consciousness and lightning energy. It was lifeless and would soon recover. Grind your dog head off. Xianxia Great Millstone. The Xianxia green dragon opened its mouth and roared. It rushed forward and controlled a large amount of Xianxia to spin above Sheng Emperor Zhongli. Creak. Creak. Sheng Emperor's head was twisted a few times and his neck was twisted like a fried dough twist. Brat, do you want to die? In the void, another human-shaped lightning bolt strode out. He had the head of a dragon and the body of a human. He was 3,000 meters tall, imposing and mighty. The horns on his head were lofty, his eyes were like divine lamps, and his fist was covered in dense scales. He brazenly punched out, causing the scales of Xianxia Azure Dragon to fly off and spit out dragon blood. Rumble, rumble, rumble. He smashed through several peaks that were 300 meters tall in succession. Mushroom clouds soared up in the sky one after another, and only then did he stop when he collided with a May Golden Peak. He stared at Jiang Tian with a gloomy look in his eyes as he waved the dim Ding Hai Pearl in his hand. Instantly, cold winds from the 9 heavens whistled, and an extremely cold aura of the mysterious underworld suffused and surged. In the blink of an eye, 100 miles of space was sealed in ice. Jiang Tian and the 6 god bodies were frozen in the air. They couldn't even move their little fingers. This ice was dark black in color, but it was extremely transparent like a black crystal. This was not the usual freezing, but some kind of powerful sealing and confinement magic power. Make molecular motion and even atomic motion disappear. Not even normal soul formation overlords could withstand it. They would be frozen to death. At this time even the Thunder Dragon divine body, which was the most violent and fierce, was frozen in place with a shocked and frightened look in his eyes. The thunderbolts he spat out suddenly froze in the air like modern abstract sculptures. Not even a wisp of them could be activated. The Ding Hai Pearl is one of the most precious treasures in the world, known as a peerless divine artifact. Its freezing power is among the top 10 in the universe. The energy of the ancient underworld inside is extremely cold. It can freeze everything, seal all Dharma power and vitality, and even freeze space to form a forbidden area. At this time Jiang Tian looked sad and there was a bit of desperation, indignation and anger in his eyes. It wasn't that he wasn't strong. Even though his divine body had only reached the initial success level, it was already enough to intimidate an area deep in the universe. However, it was difficult for Jiang Tian to withstand fighting against 4 ancient thearchs alone, even if they were just marks of the Grand Tao. The 4 words ancient thearchs were enough to prove everything. During the Age of Legends, when overlords were everywhere, they dominated this world and might have even fought in the depths of the universe. They were extremely talented and stood at the top of all living beings. Even though Jiang Tian was strong, he had to start from the beginning after all. He was only a false core cultivator at the moment. The difference in power was too great. Besides, the 4 of them attacked one after another with Dharma treasures and divine artifacts from the ancient times. It was too terrifying. Kid, since you recognize this treasure, just give it up and destroy your own power. Don't try to recover spirit chi, don't try to become stronger, don't start a fight. Isn't it good to be alive? Why do you want to die? The mark of the Ao Emperor glared at Zhang Tian and roared. It was like a dragon roaring in the sky, shaking the entire Wuxia. Ignorant kid, you want cause a great change in the world and do things against the heavens. How dare you be disrespectful to your ancestors? You are courting death. Zhang Tian was almost exhausted. Even his dantian was frozen. His true yuan did not fluctuate much. It was dead silent. Even his boiling blood had turned into ice. You want me to give up? I can give up. I can be an ant, a useless and weak ant. I can forget about the wonderful world outside. I can ignore the safety of the human race and the future generations. Everyone can just muddle along. But I can't let her die. He smiled sadly. Suddenly, Zhou Xian's gentle smile and her clear and gentle eyes appeared in his mind. The changes in the world are nothing to fear. The ancestors are nothing to fear. If the world wants to restrict me, I will break the cage of the world and change the world. If the rules of the ancestors are not correct, I will change the rules or even abolish them. I will break the idols and worship of the ancestors. Why should I care about the rumors of the mortals? I only want to have a clear conscience. His voice was getting louder and louder. Every word was getting louder and louder. The last sentence was already a roar. In the next moment, Zhang Tian's blood-red eyes flashed with murderous intent. A torrential battle intent swept out like an ocean. It could even penetrate the forbidden zone, causing the ancient monarch's marks to tremble slightly. 6 divine bodies, listen to my command. Sacrifice the fake cores. Return to one. Sublimate to the limit. His eyes flashed with boundless determination. With a loud roar, cracks appeared around his body. He forcefully cast the last spell of the transcending divine 9 transformation art. All of a sudden, 6 fake dawn jumped out from the dantians of the 6 god bodies. Colorful Jin Yuan shot out like beams of light, interweaving with each other like a hexagram, surrounding Zhang Tian in the middle. Strands of colorful Jin Yuan gathered in Zhang Tian's dantian. Transcending divine 9 transformation art fuse. At this moment, Zhang Tian gave up on forming the chaotic divine body and forced his way to the golden core in order to defeat the 4 ancient emperors' marks. With Zhang Tian's cultivation level in terms of true yuan reserves, he could have reached the golden core cultivation level or even the mid-stage golden core cultivation level. In order to form the chaotic golden core and form the chaotic divine body, he did not hesitate to suppress his cultivation level and use the 6 divine bodies to bear the 6 fake cores. If he formed the golden core now, it would only be a defective chaotic golden core and an incomplete chaotic divine body. But after forming the incomplete chaotic divine body and golden core, it would be extremely difficult for him to form a complete chaotic divine body. He could destroy his golden core and cultivate from scratch. Or he could go against the heavenly Tao and reverse the divine body to separate the golden core. But the success rate was extremely low. The most likely possibility was that he would completely become an ordinary golden core, like a mortal body or the worst cultivator with mixed spirit roots. But for Zhou Xian, for the little life in her womb, and for Zhang Tian, he had no other choice. He could only do this. The moment the divine grade fake cores were successfully sacrificed. Boom! A thunderous sound like a 1,000-foot tsunami was heard in Zhang Tian's dantian. The vast chaotic chi that seemed to have come from the beginning of the world soared into the sky like a giant curtain, turning into pillars of light that pierced through the heavens and the earth. Like peerless heavenly swords, they shot out in all directions. The beams of light flashed across the sky with an earth-shattering power, and the forbidden realm formed by the ancient underworld black ice cracked. With Zhang Tian as the center, giant cracks appeared in the dimension. Then the forbidden realm was completely torn apart. Without the support of the fake cores, the 6 divine bodies fell to the ground one after another. They were covered in cracks like porcelain. Let's fight. On the other hand, Zhang Tian stepped out of the chaotic forbidden zone. His thick black hair flowed like a waterfall as he stared at the ancient virtuous paragons. His eyes burned with an unyielding battle intent. Come on. I'm going to break your necks and smash your heads today. Zhang Tian felt that there was endless energy in his body, as if he could crush the earth. He shouted and threw a punch. The sun and the moon immediately turned upside down and the sky was torn apart. The world was in chaos. At this moment he was surrounded by boundless chaotic aura. He was like an ancient god that had split the heavens and earth apart, standing between the heavens and the earth. It was as if he could shake the sun and moon with just a wave of his hand. The forbidden zone created by the sea-suppressing pearl was like tofu, completely crumbling into dust. Even the vast and majestic aura of the ancient underworld had completely vanished. Chapter 1258. Daoist Taichu, stop. Ao Sovereign suddenly raised his hand and shouted. It's too late to stop now. Jiang Tian bellowed in anger. With a single move he crossed the distance of dozens of li and arrived in front of Ao Sovereign, punching out a punch. Instantly the chaotic true essence filled the air and formed layers upon layers of giant waves. It was like the birth of heaven and earth, and all living things were born. It formed a fist the size of a mountain and pulled out streams of air turbulence as it struck out. I told you to stop. Let's have a good talk. Ao Sovereign shouted in fear as he threw out a punch. The scaly giant fist was completely made of thunder and lightning, and it clashed with Jiang Tian's Zhenyuan giant fist. At the same time the Dinghai pearl shook. The endless ancient underworld aura behind him erupted like a volcano as it tried to form a forbidden zone to freeze Jiang Tian. Boom! Loud explosions could be heard coming from the depths of the sky. Their clothes fluttered behind them. The ancient Ming Qi that gushed out from the sea-calming pearl behind Ao Sovereign was blown away by Jiang Tian's fists like a tree that was snapped in half by a strong gust of wind. Such insane true essence. Not even a soul formation realm cultivator could withstand it. Ao Sovereign's mark twisted in pain. Although it was just a mark, it could still be felt. Of course he would be in great pain as his fist was shattered. At that moment he was still not a true chaotic golden core, but he was already a substandard one. Although his level was slightly lower, it was still something that these ancient emperors' Dao marks could not withstand. 10,000 swords piercing body. Die. Jiang Tian suddenly turned his fist into a palm and waved his hand. The chaotic true essence gushed out violently. Swoosh. The true essence turned into 10,000 flying swords that were as thin as a cow's hair and shot towards Ao Sovereign's ribs. The numerous flying swords grew larger in the wind, piercing, lifting, chopping, pointing, collapsing, hanging, lifting, wiping, sweeping, parrying, intercepting, circling, swimming, drilling. The sword moves and sword momentum were swift and fierce, endlessly changing. Ao Sovereign's expression changed drastically as he retreated. Sometimes he would fly close to the surface of the water, sometimes he would roll around like a donkey, and sometimes he would soar into the sky like a dragon. His movements were extremely strange as he dodged the attacks of the flying swords. Great overarching heavenly stars palm. Jiang Tian took a step forward, causing the space around him to explode. His speed was inconceivably fast as he soared into the sky and slammed down a palm strike onto Ao Sovereign. Behind Jiang Tian, it was as if the chaos had just been created. Billions of stars were floating up and down, flickering. Every single star had transformed into a vast amount of palm energy. Rumble. It was obvious that this palm was coming down from the sky, but there were palm prints everywhere. Layers upon layers of giant palms covered the sky. Ao Sovereign was instantly engulfed by the gigantic palm. Countless explosions shook the heaven and earth, and hundreds of mushroom clouds rose into the sky. Everything was in chaos and it was impossible to see his figure clearly. Moments later, the palm force disappeared and the Ao Sovereign floated in the air with his face facing down as if he was too ashamed to face anyone. In the sky, many ancient emperors looked over and exchanged glances. After a while, Xianxia, who was holding the flame in his hand, murmured, "He seems to really have the chaotic divine body. Is there really such a body in the world?" Divine body. If it hadn't been created, of course it would only be a legend. But now that it has been created, you still don't believe it? The Fuxi Great Emperor said with tears in his eyes. He really can create the chaotic divine body. This is the body of a god of creation. This is the person we want to choose, the Son of Heaven. There is hope for our ancestral land. We have waited for tens of thousands of years and finally, it is here. He has obtained the dancing green wood, the vermilion bird light flame and my chaotic origin stone cauldron. This person is really lucky. Emperor Zhongli exclaimed and even felt a little envious. What? Jiang Tian was slightly taken aback. Suddenly his heart skipped a beat. What? It would have been fine if Emperor Xing didn't mention it, but now that he did, Jiang Tian suddenly felt that his luck since his rebirth was too good. Although the spirit qi on earth had dried up, and although his path of cultivation had been bumpy and he had encountered many enemies, his luck had always been good. He had actually managed to find 6 types of divine body materials on Earth and the surrounding dimensional worlds, which were like weeds compared to the vast universe. The probability of this happening was extremely, extremely low. It was as if there was an invisible hand that was controlling his fate, fiddling with the trajectory of his life and bringing him a lot of luck. However, this thought just flashed through Zhang Tian's mind. He didn't think too much about it. After all, he was facing a few primordial emperors at this moment. It was as if he was facing a great enemy. How could he be distracted at all? The energy of Emperor Wa's mark turned into a lightning finger that extended dozens of kilometers away. It poked Ao Huang, who was floating in the air, and said, "You're not fighting anymore? Are you convinced?" "Don't bother me. How can I be convinced? I'm just a little confused. Let me think, how did I lose?" That palm strike of his was really strange. Ao Huang lay on his back in the void, motionless. His face was facing the ground as he said grumpily, "Little friend, reverse your Dantian and disperse your substandard chaotic golden core. Who knows, you might be able to recreate the real chaotic divine body and golden core. We can have a good chat. This is really a misunderstanding." Seeing Zhang Tian striding towards him, Emperor Zhongli was shocked. He took a few steps back and quickly waved his hand. "Substandard chaotic divine body? I can still beat you." Zhang Tian stepped into the air and said with a bleak face, "I thought that since I only have a substandard chaotic divine body, the ancient emperors could still fight me. Who knew that you guys are so weak? Come. Isn't your absolute heaven sword able to cut through everything? Let's have a taste of my true yuan giant sword today." He condensed his vast true yuan into a giant sword that was 1,000 meters long. He swung it like Pangu swinging a giant axe to split the chaos. Boom! Emperor Zhongli's giant sword was sent flying. He was then suppressed by Zhang Tian. He ran away pathetically as he screamed in pain. "I'm just a mark that executes Emperor Sheng's will. I'm not him. I'm not an evil person. Why do you have to force me? Emperor Wa, save me." "Xuerenshi, what's with the smile on your face?" Emperor Sheng's mark was shattered again and again, but it was reformed again and again. It was drilling in and out of the space cracks without any power to fight back. Tai Chu's punch seems to be from Buddhism. Is that the 1,000 Buddha hand? So domineering. He even knows how to hover in space. His true yuan is terrifying. It's 10 times thicker than ordinary true yuan. Can even explode suddenly and form a second, third and fourth attack. Emperor Sheng is still too weak. He should be able to dodge it with the flickering light passing shadow. I can definitely dodge it. However, Emperor Wa and the others did not seem to hear it. They continued to point and comment on Zhang Tian. Xuerenshi smiled and said, "Emperor Sheng, don't be afraid. As long as your soul is not scattered, you can still reform it after it's destroyed." Suddenly, Zhang Tian's soul devourer burst out and formed Yin Hell Gate, devouring more than half of Emperor Sheng's remaining soul. Emperor Sheng's mark was frozen on the spot. His face was as bitter as a constipated gourd. He opened and closed his mouth with difficulty and said, "He even killed a mark. Too fierce." Seeing this scene, Xuerenshi was dumbfounded. He jumped and slipped away, retreating dozens of kilometers away. "Oh my god, this guy has even collected soul devourers? His luck is too good." No, it's not as simple as his luck. His cultivation techniques are all real immortal cultivation techniques. They're even more powerful than ours. Emperor Wa showed an appreciative smile. But the next moment, her face darkened and she said with hesitation in her eyes, "He may be a reincarnated body. But if the soul of this reincarnated body comes from a star race and is not of our race, it will be troublesome." Xuerenshi had just steadied himself when Zhang Tian was already approaching him. Xuerenshi was so scared that he trembled. He waved the torch in his hand and shouted, "Heaven, fire, thunder, mountain." Numerous bolts of lightning leaped about like flames as they exploded towards Zhang Tian, rumbling as they ceaselessly swelled up in the sky. They were like layer upon layer of mountains that protruded from the ground, sparkling and translucent, incomparably gorgeous and enchanting, and they contained violent killing intent. Speed of wind and thunder. Zhang Tian's eyes were filled with excitement and he couldn't help but let out a long roar. The wind and thunder wings suddenly appeared from his back, and with just a flap his speed reached the extreme. His feet stepped on many flaming lightning mountains as he charged forward. Flying star sky shattering fist. Rumble. He opened and closed his fists and legs. As his body moved, many stars hovered around him. He looked like the god of creation. The starry river fell and the chaos aura spread out, suppressing and shattering the heaven fire and thunder mountains. No matter how much the heaven fire and thunder mountains exploded, they couldn't hurt him. Xianxia's hands trembled in fear. This brat's mortal body was so strong that he could withstand his skills. He hurled the lightning torch at Zhang Tian, but it was shattered by Zhang Tian's vermilion bird feather saber. The two of them kept on unleashing their secret arts and they were locked in battle. Sheng Sovereign Zhong Li's body was not solid enough. He was fluttering in the air and he said angrily, "Swearin, can you do it or not? Quickly capture him and take back my soul." Emperor Hua, what do you mean by race? Be it humans, monsters or demons, those who are of one mind are our race. Ao Sovereign jumped up like a carp and came to Emperor Hua. He shouted impatiently and the two of them immediately started a heated debate. Sheng Sovereign Zhongli looked at Fuxi Monarch and stammered, "Brother Fuxi, you're the best at gossiping." "What do you mean I'm the best at gossiping? Are you scolding me? That's called divination." Fuxi Monarch's face turned pale. "Emperor Shi, you are good at divination and formation deduction. You are the best in the universe. Can you find out where his weakness is? Then you can help Xianxia to get his soul back." Emperor Zhongli said respectfully. "Of course he has a weakness. There is no such thing as a flawless technique in the world." Fuxi Monarch stared at Zhang Tian as he cast the 8 trigrams. The patterns of the 8 trigrams flickered as they revolved, regrouped and merged together. He was rapidly calculating Zhang Tian's qi reserves and circulation. He was also trying to predict the next step of his skills and techniques to find out his weakness. The amount of calculation was unparalleled, but Fuxi Monarch seemed to have a lot of energy left. He was calm as if victory was within his grasp. He was the creator of the 8 trigrams, an expert in array formations and divination. He was the best of his generation. With this small 8 trigrams, he could derive all kinds of things from the big ones to the small ones such as the origin and fate of people and objects. There was nothing that he didn't know. "I found the weakness." Fuxi Monarch was immersed in his calculations and suddenly he smiled proudly. Suddenly he looked down and saw that Zhang Tian had broken through many of Suiren's skills. Then Suiren rushed up to Suiren and punched out. Chapter 1259. His weak point is below his ribs. It's changed. It's at his back. No, it's at his neck. It's at his neck. Fuxi Monarch shouted. "Where is it? Can't you be more reliable? Talk to him through your divine psyche. You're too slow." Sheng Sovereign Zhongli was so angry that he wanted to cry. However, Xianxia's reaction was extremely fast. The flaming long saber slashed towards Zhang Tian's neck at lightning speed. Sovereign Hua, who was arguing with Ao Sovereign, glanced over and clapped her hands. She smiled and said, "Not bad, little Suazi. Let's see how arrogant this brat is. What's so great about the Chaos Celestial Body? It is, after all, an incomplete Chaos Celestial Body." Sheng Sovereign Zhongli laughed out loud while the other ancient emperors snorted proudly. Ao Sovereign only cared about arguing with Sovereign Hua anxiously. "I was also a monster back then, but didn't I fight for the humans? Not of my race." "What do you mean?" "Qi." Xianxia's flaming long saber slashed through Zhang Tian's neck and his head flew out. Just as Xianxia was about to stop, he said, "Ha, you've been beheaded by me. I've defeated you." Xianxia. Suddenly Zhang Tian's body swayed and his head popped out again. Then 2 more heads popped out from his neck. The 3 heads and 6 arms swung around and slashed towards Xianxia. Xianxia smirked and said, "You're so happy after beheading one? There's more." Ping ping ping. Xianxia was struck by the attacks and he was sent flying like a rag doll. In the end he fell headfirst into the air and stopped moving. 3 heads and 6 arms? That's the skill of the monster race. The Ao Sovereign laughed. He cheered for Zhang Tian and said, "The monster race is indeed strong and domineering. Come kill Sovereign Hua." "Found it." Fuxi Monarch kept the 8 trigrams and said proudly. "His weak point is at his dantian, the 3rd from the back of his spine. There's no way he can escape. Very steady. Too slow." Xianxia wanted to cry. "I'll go beat that brat to death." Shenong walked out with a hoe in hand. He was in high spirits as he rushed towards Zhang Tian. Come, come, come. Let's spar. The Fuxi Great Emperor hesitated for a moment, then suddenly slapped his head and shouted, "Wrong, wrong." His loophole was fake. The chaotic physique was too heaven-defying. There were countless dantians in his body. At the very least it was not just one dantian. He was purposely setting up a maze. Wait, let me calculate again. This time he definitely won't be able to escape. Stop talking. Shinong flew backward with his hair disheveled. Blood-shaped lightning bolts kept spurting out from his mouth as he gritted his teeth and shouted, "I knew you were wrong the moment I attacked." Emperor Shing and Zhongli rolled their eyes and were speechless. Fuxi the Great Emperor coughed awkwardly and glanced at the many great ancient emperors staring at him. "What do you mean? It was you guys who asked me to do it. Don't worry, I won't be wrong this time. Stop fighting. If you continue, his golden core will be completely solidified and it will be too late to disperse his true yuan." Emperor Hua said angrily. "Taichu, our little friend, we are not really trying to kill you. We are just testing you. Only the divine physique can defeat that powerful enemy. Please forgive us for being too harsh." Ao Huang clasped his fists and threw the Dinghai Pearl to Jiang Tian. He then shouted with an expectant tone, "Dinghai Pearl. My little friend, use it to cultivate the dark ice physique. You must cultivate the chaotic divine physique." Emperor Sheng and Zhongli also threw the quieting heaven sword to Jiang Tian and said, "Stop fighting. Stop messing around. I'm not fighting anymore. Where's my soul? Give it back to me. I have already shown my sincerity." "Are we really not fighting anymore?" Holding the Dinghai Pearl and the quieting heaven sword tightly, Jiang Tian finally confirmed that these great ancient emperors were not hostile to him. He pointed at the golden lake in the middle of his forehead and the Yin gate appeared. The gate opened and a faint soul was spat out. Then he stomped his right foot and activated the Transcendent 9 transformation art. Now that he had just gathered 6 divine physiques, what he created was naturally not the real chaotic divine physique and the corresponding golden core. However, if the golden core was formed for too long, it would be difficult to separate and reconstruct it. The longer the time, the lower the probability of separation. Jiang Tian could not wait any longer. His dantian rumbled and the chaotic golden core that had just taken shape shook and dispersed. It turned into 6 different true yuan and formed 6 false cores. Thank goodness. The Transcendent 9 transformation art is originally a heaven-defying art. I can't believe it managed to reverse and disperse this chaotic false core. Otherwise, all my previous efforts would have been wasted. Jiang Tian heaved a sigh of relief and quickly injected the 6 false cores into the 6 divine physiques. Boom. The 6 divine physiques woke up and turned into true yuan under the guidance of the Transcendent 9 transformation art and entered Jiang Tian's body. "Here is the darkest stone tablet. Use it to forge the dark physique." Fuxi the Great hesitated for a moment, then lifted his hand to erase the immortal will imprint on the stone tablet and threw it to Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian raised his hand and grabbed. The stone tablet shrank to the size of an inkstone and fell into Jiang Tian's hand. "This treasure is extremely rare. It can help me cultivate the dark shadow divine physique." Jiang Tian looked at it and found that it was carved out of a piece of darkest material. His eyes brightened. This material was extremely rare in the universe. It could change shape at will and swallow and hide everything. It was the best hiding Dharma treasure. Even the mighty figures of the deity realm and the divine-level civilizations could not find it with their vast immortal will. Fellow cultivators, I can't go empty-handed since I've already prepared gifts for Tai Chu. But what should I give him? Emperor Hua frowned and pondered for a moment. Suddenly she smiled and said, "Write the Kunpeng blood essence." He took out an item. It was a blood bead about the size of an egg. It was glittering with blood essence. This is the monster core of the first Kunpeng born in the chaotic world when this world was first created. This Kunpeng had an endless lifespan and was powerful. It was as famous as Kong Xian the Peacock King. He did evil in the ancient continent and was killed by me. I took his blood essence and formed this pill. This pill can help you cultivate the Kunpeng body. You can control the wind and clouds, be fearless of all the wind and evil spirits and control space. Then she flicked her finger and sent it to Jiang Tian. It's the Kunpeng blood essence, the first Kunpeng in this world. It must have reached the soul formation level. It's enough for me to form the wind divine physique. Jiang Tian connected the 3 treasures and was overjoyed. With the 3 treasures he could cultivate the wind, ice and dark divine physiques. Then forming the chaotic divine physique would be a piece of cake. Taichu, when you form the golden core or even the nascent soul, please come back to this world if it's convenient. We'll help you go through the tribulation as the will of heaven. Emperor Hua said gently. They had been gone for a long time and no one knew if they were dead or alive. However, the great Tao imprint still existed in this world and represented the will of heaven in this world. The so-called tribulation was the tribulation that the will of heaven would send every time a cultivator broke through the cultivation level and sensed the connection between heaven and man. For example, a cultivator was like a child born in a world, but the child's power was getting stronger and stronger. He even wanted to break free from the restraint of the will of heaven and earth and surpass this world. Of course, the world was unwilling and had to send a tribulation. However, Emperor Hua didn't mean to kill Jiang Tian with the thunder tribulation. Instead, she wanted to refine Jiang Tian's golden core or nascent soul to repair the flaws and increase the probability of forming the chaotic golden core. Thank you, Emperor Hua. Thank you, seniors. When Jiang Tian heard this, his face turned solemn as he respectfully bowed and cupped his fists. Although he had reached the top of Hongmeng in his previous life and might be a bit more powerful than Emperor Hua and the others, Emperor Hua was one of the creator goddesses. However, Emperor Nuwa was one of the goddesses of this world after all, and many ancient sages had given him such precious treasures. For his sake, Jiang Tian naturally didn't need to put on airs in front of them. We're going to leave. Emperor Hua nodded and sighed. She said with a hint of kindness, My young friend, the fate of Earth is in your hands. Jiang Tian quickly said, Seniors, please wait. Who were the overlords who invaded Earth in the ancient times? Were they the Annihilators? You know about the Annihilators too? Many of the great ancient emperors were shocked. Jiang Tian became serious and his heart sank. He was sure that the Annihilators were the ones who had invaded the deity ground and the ancient Earth tens of thousands of years ago. They were very troublesome to deal with. Even the divine-level civilizations had to be careful when dealing with them. No wonder even the ancient emperors didn't dare to activate the deity trap array for fear of attracting them. However, Jiang Tian had become a deity emperor in his previous life and was only one step away from becoming a god in Hongmeng, so he didn't take it to heart. In his previous life, Jiang Tian had returned to Earth after a few hundred years, and Earth was still there, which meant that the real crisis would come at least a few hundred years later. Jiang Tian didn't believe that he couldn't come up with a way to deal with them in the next few hundred years. Among the many marks of the great Tao, only the mark of Empress Enviwa did not seem surprised. She smiled and said, I told you that Taichu must be the reincarnation of an overlord from another planet. Looks like we found the right person. As long as he's with the people of this world. In my previous life I was still Jiang Tian and almost became a god in Hongmeng. However, I died at the last moment and was reborn. I wasn't possessed or reincarnated. Jiang Tian told them the truth. However, after hearing what he said, how could this be? The ancient sages gasped and looked at each other in shock. They couldn't believe it. Chapter 1260. You almost became the deity of Hongmeng? That's too powerful. You've been to the realm of the true deities. Many of the great ancient emperors were shocked. Then they looked at each other in confusion and frowned. Were you still yourself in your previous life? That's extremely rare. It's amazing. Did you reverse time? Reverse time? How much Dharma power does that require? Not even normal true deities can do that. However, they were just imprints of the great path after all, not their real bodies. Their intelligence couldn't compare with their real bodies. They couldn't figure it out at the moment. It was time to say goodbye. In the end, Jiang Tian asked, Is your original body still alive? Emperor Sheng, I've seen the guards of the southern gate. Are they waiting for your return? Jiang Tian felt a bit sad when he thought of the guards of the southern gate who were still fighting for tens of thousands of years. What's the point of our real bodies being alive? A hint of sorrow appeared on the Sheng Emperor's imprint as it said, I can't feel the existence of my real body anymore. Even if he's still alive, I'm afraid he's already gone to a very, very far place. Besides, we've had different experiences and thoughts since tens of thousands of years ago. He's always been a coward. I don't know what he's become. Jiang Tian's eyes flashed as he fell into deep thought. Many thoughts appeared in his mind. Emperor Sheng's imprint was like a clone. It had its own consciousness and had stayed in the deity trap array around Earth. It had witnessed and even participated in the battles between the human deities and the invaders in the ancient times. Emperor Shing, who had started the journey in the deity ground, was a great strategist, but he was a fugitive at heart. He had even abandoned many of his people when he was wandering in the deity ground. He took a flying ship and changed his route so he didn't go to the southern gate. Could it be that he was really a deserter? I can't answer that question either. The Ao sovereign's imprint tapped on Jiang Tian's shoulder, interrupting his thoughts, and said bitterly, "Because my imprint was left by Ao Huang before he wandered in the deity ground. The connection between me and Ao Huang's real body became weaker and weaker. However, I can be sure that my true self, Ao sovereign, is dead." Jiang Tian raised his eyebrows and stared at the Ao sovereign's branding mark. After all, they were imprints of the great Tao. Even if they relied on the immortal trap grand formation and had energy pouring into them, tens of thousands of years was already their limit. They would probably only be able to hold on for a few hundred years at most. If Ao sovereign was already dead, his divine soul could no longer be replenished and his collapse would be inevitable. The Ao sovereign's mark smiled brightly and said proudly, "But you don't have to be afraid. We don't have to be afraid. We have you." His branded feet and legs began to scatter like ashes, turning into pure unconscious energy and returning to silence. However, his eyes still flickered with a bright light. With a deep hope, he smiled and said, "On the path of cultivation, one should be constantly improving and becoming stronger and stronger. You latecomers should surpass us." The Fuxi Great Emperor's silhouette also began to float. His voice was hollow but powerful, resounding and powerful. "Cultivator Taichu, if it weren't for the arrival of planet destruction, the existence of the deity trap array and the wandering deity ground, Earth would have become a bright cultivation planet and the most powerful cultivation civilization would have been born. That's the dream of all the ancient emperors, but we didn't achieve it. So it's up to you." The imprints of the ancient emperors were connected and they spoke at the same time, turning into a torrent of voices that resounded in the sky. Billions of people could hear it clearly even without the use of live streaming software. "Just like you said, our ancestors aren't enough. There's nothing impressive about our ancestors, seniors and ancients. What we can't do, you can do it. Fellow Daoist Grand Primordium, go and revive your spiritual energy. Go and draw your sword towards the vast starry sky. Go and slash your saber towards the heavens. It's time for the races on Earth to take back the glory that belongs to them. This new era depends on you." When Jiang Tian descended from the sky, he looked like a mess. His hair was messy and his clothes were tattered. His chest was stained with blood and his skin was burnt. But after seeing this scene through the military's live broadcast, billions of people around the world couldn't underestimate him at all. They were in awe. He's someone blessed by the ancient gods. Even the ancient gods are convinced by him. He's the only savior. The observer posted on the forum. "Follow Kong Teichu and fight for mankind. Show your sword to the sky. My 42-meter-long saber is thirsty and thirsty again." Zhou Xian, the loyal fan, shouted on Weibo with a funny picture. Nobody knew that he was in tears in front of the screen. That battle had been too difficult to win. Kong Teichu broke the deity trap array and the imprisonment of thousands of years. He's the hero of mankind. Comments were flashing in the live broadcast room. Many Weibo, forums and Tieba servers were immediately overloaded. They had never thought that Kong Teichu would be so fierce in that battle. He killed the famous sects of the Preaching Dynasty and even destroyed the 9 cauldrons left by Emperor Yu. He went against the heavenly tribulation and heavenly punishment, tore apart the deity trap array set by the ancient gods and broke the confinement of heaven and earth that had imprisoned mankind for thousands of years. He subdued the mark of the great way of the ancient emperors and was blessed by the ancient gods. He was called the Chosen One and the founder of the new era. Every single one of these 3 matters was a great achievement that could split the heavens and split the earth apart, and it shocked both the ancient and modern times. His achievements covered 1,000 generations and illuminated the ages. But Jiang Tian in just a few hours completed it all at once. The savior Kong Teichu. The founder of the new era Kong Teichu. The invincible Kong Teichu. The most powerful person under the sky Kong Teichu. Countless people gave Jiang Tian different titles to express their excitement. At Tianqing School, Jiang Zhixing, his wife and many others heaved a sigh of relief. It was as if a stone had been lifted from their hearts. That's an ancient true god. My grandson defeated him and subdued him? Jiang Chongging was dumbfounded. His whole body trembled and tears flowed down his face. He still felt like he was dreaming. This battle was too dangerous. Could even be said that danger was everywhere. Anyone in this world would probably be reduced to ashes if they were caught in it. No one had expected that the destruction of the 9 cauldrons would trigger the deity trap array. No one had expected that the deity trap array would contain the mark of the ancient gods. But Jiang Tian had turned the tables and defeated them. He had also convinced them with his strength. Yes, Grandpa. Jiang Tian won. Zhao Xueqing smiled with tears. She couldn't hold back her tears. She was connected to Jiang Tian's divine sense, so she knew Jiang Tian's every thought. When facing the mark of the 4 ancient emperors, Jiang Tian was in a desperate situation and almost wanted to give up. But Jiang Tian's deep love for her made him fight to the death and create a miracle. The outcome has been decided. The momentum has been formed. In the Pentagon of the United States, Deputy Minister Keynes, who was in a military uniform, stood straight and waved excitedly. The danger of this battle is far beyond our expectations and imagination. I'm afraid that the hidden forces around the world have been deeply awed by Mr. Zhang's unparalleled power. There's no need to fight anymore. During the time when Jiang Tian was in seclusion, the Tianqing school had joined forces with the Pentagon to investigate many hidden forces. But these hidden forces refused to join the Myth Alliance. They were obviously leaving themselves a way out. They didn't want to go to war with the ruins of immortality and might become the first group to lead the way. But now this battle had shocked the world. Jiang Tian's power had suppressed the world. These forces might be taken down by Jiang Tian without any effort. Yi Karen, Ying Su and many other cultivators of Wuxia were excited. Once the Myth Alliance was established, it would establish the unshakable position of Wuxia, Sidoni and Tianqing school, or to be exact, Jiang Tian in the era of the spirit qi recovery. Around Mount Amei in Wuxia, many famous preaching families and reclusive royalty looked at the sky in despair and turned into statues. How is this possible? Yu Wenden, Zhou Xian and the old monk of Huangjue Temple were in a daze. Run! The old monk of Huangjue Temple screamed and led the Zhou family of the Daming dynasty to escape on a cloud. Go back to your own dimensional spaces. Yu Wenden howled miserably and panicked like a stray dog. At this moment, the regret in his heart couldn't be washed away even with all the water in the world. Originally, Jiang Tian was very sincere and respected the major forces, hoping to form a joint conference with them to work together to revive spirit qi and start a new era on Earth. But he looked down on Jiang Tian, who was just a commoner. Either he didn't revive spirit qi or he revived spirit qi. He should be the leader of the Myth Alliance. He didn't want to leave the mountain at all. He thought that he could rely on the Immortal trap array to compete with Jiang Tian with some juniors, but he didn't expect that many of his disciples would be killed. He came out of the mountain in anger and took revenge. He even used the splendid mountain river cauldron and the Immortal trap array, but he ended up like this. At this moment the famous preaching families had been utterly defeated. The disciples of the great Xia, Yinshang, Great Zhou and the other 4 families were in despair. Their trump cards, the splendid mountain river cauldron and the array spirits of the Immortal trap array, had been destroyed by Jiang Tian. Even the ancient grand cultivators were subdued by Jiang Tian, so they had nothing left to rely on. Kong Teichu would definitely eliminate the root of the problem. There was no way that he would let them go. They split into 3 groups and soared into the sky. Like the roar of a fighter jet, they rushed toward their respective dimensional spaces and small heavens. Everyone please wait. My lord Kong Teichu is famous. Those who are loyal to him will be spared. Suddenly, a shadow flashed across dozens of miles and stopped in front of the army of the Yinshang family. It was ancestral patriarch True Dragon. Whoosh! Thousands of soldiers trembled when they heard his terrifying dragon Dharma form. They hurried a few steps forward and knelt on the ground. The leaders of the elders, ministers and generals begged. We have no blood relationship with the Yin family. We only became enemies with Senior Taichu because we were bewitched by him. We know we're wrong. We're willing to follow our savior and fight for the recovery of spirit qi and the beginning of a new era. We won't hesitate to sacrifice our lives for him. Only a few disciples of the Yin family were left standing there, dumbfounded. Wasn't it too fast to betray them? Well, since you're willing to pledge your loyalty, then seal your cultivation and wait for the verdict. Ancestral patriarch True Dragon nodded. Then a disciple of the Yinshang family stepped forward and said, "We're also willing to pledge our loyalty to the Taichu World Venerable. Do you think you're worthy?" The True Dragon patriarch looked at them with disdain. He snorted and slammed his palm down. Instantly, 100-meter-long giant palm covered in scales came down, crushing many disciples of the Shang dynasty into powder and blood. The famous families of the Yinshang family were annihilated. Chapter 1261. Yuwenden was the fastest. He was already 100 miles away in a flying military vehicle, but he was still stopped by Liansheng. "You still want to run?" Liansheng roared with a ferocious look on his face. "Bastard. You're an eminent monk, but why are you following Kong Teichu? Get out of the way and you might have a chance to live." Yu Wending scolded with a scowl. He was weak and couldn't fight anymore, but there were still a few golden core overlords in the sect who couldn't be underestimated. "A bunch of bastards. If you didn't control the deity trap array, you wouldn't have the chance to show off in this world." Liansheng roared and raised his hand. "How dare you challenge my master? Today I'll show you what you're made of." Boom. Beside him, 1,000 zhang tall mountain, the 10,000 Buddha apex mountain, rose from the ground and was actually pulled over by him. It flew far above the army formation and then smashed down from the sky. "No." Many disciples yelled in despair. "That's terrifying. Is Kong Teichu's servant so powerful? He threw a mountain and destroyed a city. This kind of strength, even if placed in the ancient times, can be called a god." Yu Wenden and the other overlords looked up in shock. Billions of people in front of the screen were dumbfounded and they screamed in fear. 1,000 feet tall? What did that mean? It was 3,000 meters tall, which was equivalent to half of Mount Everest. However, Lotus Tathagata had forcefully grabbed the entire mountain and smashed it down from the sky. This power was no less terrifying than a small planet crashing into Earth. If it hit, it could wipe a large city off the face of the earth. Boom. Within the Yu family's army, the danshians of several Golden Core realm elders rumbled. Vast amounts of true yuan shot up into the sky, creating many strange phenomena as they tried to support the mountain peak. But it was useless. Bang. The mountain moved dozens of miles and smashed into the Yu clan's army, sinking into the ground. The earth shook like the skin of a drum and the entire Wuxia shook violently. After the 10,000 Buddha domes smashed down, be it Golden Core or Foundation establishment, all of them were smashed hundreds of meters deep into the ground. They all exploded and turned into meat paste, completely disappearing from this world. What was more shocking was that the Buddhist temples, Taoist temples and houses on the 1,000 Buddha peak weren't affected at all. None of them were killed. Liansheng Tathagata had frozen them with his Dharma power. What an overbearing power. Even before Yu Wending died, his face was still filled with unwillingness and astonishment. He didn't expect that he would die in the hands of an old servant of Jiang Tian. He didn't even have the qualifications to die in Jiang Tian's hands. Liansheng raised his hand and summoned a 1,000-foot-tall mountain. With one strike, the Yu family of the Qin dynasty was annihilated. 10 minutes later, ancestral patriarch Takong caught up with the descendants of the Jiang family and killed all of them mercilessly. A quarter of an hour later, old freak Mingyi caught up with the remnants of the Ji family. The Yellow Spring River stretched across the sky, filled with death qi, mercilessly strangling and devouring all life. Countless bodies turned into pus and white bones, and their souls were devoured, becoming vengeful souls in the Yellow Spring. Seeing that the 4 major sects were destroyed, the old monk of Huangjue Temple led the disciples of the reclusive royalty to flee in all directions like headless flies. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of them. He was wearing armor and holding a long halberd. He stood in the air like a god of war. "Ing Su. We are all members of the Guardians of Wuxia. We fought side by side. You are the leader of the Reclusive Royalty Alliance. Please let us go." "Yes, we were bewitched by the Pre-Qin dynasty. We know we are wrong." Zhu Xian, Li Guangkou and other members of the royal family felt their hearts sink. Some of them were stunned and their faces were pale. Some of them tried to flatter Ing Su. "How dare you say you are from the Guardians of the Guardians? Who are you guarding? Who are you fighting for? Wuxia. Are you the people?" Ing Su shouted. His eyes were almost spitting fire. "We are all members of the Reclusive Royalty Alliance. Why do you have to be so aggressive?" The old monk of Huangjue Temple shouted. Now the leader of the reclusive royalty alliance, Yingsu, is no more. There is only the second-generation disciple of Tianqing school, Yingsu. Yingsu's eyes were full of fighting spirit. His face was full of killing intent. He held the long halberd and charged forward. Puff. The old monk of Huangjue Temple only lasted 3 rounds before his stomach was pierced by Yingsu's halberd. Blood stained the sky. You turned the true chi of a martial artist into true essence. That's fast. Tianqing school is really something. The old monk of Huangjue Temple fell to the ground, his body twitching. He murmured in disbelief before he died. Yingsu, you are too cruel. Seeing this, Zhou Xian was furious. He and the other members of the Zhou family of the Ming dynasty charged forward with swords and knives. Back then, in order to curry favor with the prestigious sects of the Preaching dynasty, you disregarded your comrade-in-arms and joined forces to kill me. Our friendship is severed. Yingsu was infuriated. His roar sounded like rolling thunder, and his berserk Xinyuan swept out like a raging wave. His aura was frightening, and his long halberd was like a heavenly pillar that swept across the sky, smashing Zhou Xiaoqian's brains and exploding their bodies, killing them instantly. Oh my god. He only went to Tianqing school for a few days and his progress is so terrifying. Li Kuangkol and the others were terrified. They were so scared that their legs were cramping. Like little white rabbits meeting a fierce tiger, they fled. Before Yingsu went to Tianqing school and met Jiang Tian, Zhao Xueqing and the others had taught him and helped him reach the limit. His strength had increased by at least a few times. Li Kuangkol and the others were no match for him. Swoosh. The long halberd pierced through the void like a bolt of lightning. Li Kuangkol and the others were pinned to the mountain peak like a gourd skewer. Then the long halberd shook. Li Kuangkol and the others who were still alive exploded into a rain of flesh and blood, scattering on the ground. I made him my enemy in front of everyone. With Kong Teichu's vengeful and ruthless personality, how could he spare me? Ji Muxian was anxious. He led Ji Mingchuan Yuhui and a few other disciples to escape in the direction of the Kunlun sect. Suddenly, a figure in a Taoist robe appeared in front of them and blocked their way. It was Yi Karen. Her face was cold like a fairy descending to the mortal world. She said coldly, "Senior Muxian, I want to challenge you." "What did you say?" Ji Muxian was stunned and his face was pale. Ji Muxian felt that after today, Jiang Tian would definitely settle the score with him. After all, he had injured Yi Zhantian. As for Yi Zhantian, he was Jiang Tian's right-hand man. Today he had once again denied Jiang Tian before the battle, belittling him to the point that he was nothing. However, he didn't expect that the reckoning would come so soon and in such a way. His disciple challenged him. "I said I want to challenge you. If you win, we'll write off all our past grievances." Yi Karen's eyes were filled with murderous intent. She wanted to avenge her father. "Unfilial person. I'm your master. How dare you disrespect me like this?" Ji Muxian said hatefully. "I've already left the Kunlun sect and joined Tianqing school." Yi Karen threw out her Kunlun sect disciple nameplate and sneered. "If that's the case, there won't be a problem if I challenge you again, right? I'll give you 3 breaths of time. Either you throw down your sword and admit defeat or you accept my challenge." Yi Karen said arrogantly. Ji Muxian was forced into a corner and had nowhere to retreat. He showed a trace of contempt and said hatefully, "Fine, I accept your challenge. I won't show you any mercy. I'll let you know how weak you are." He pinched his fingers and the sword on his back jumped up. However, a cold sword aura suddenly erupted from Yi Karen's waist. It was so fast that Ji Muxian didn't have time to react. Ji Muxian only felt a cold and hot sensation in his chest. He lowered his head and realized that his dantian had been shattered. Blood gushed out like a fountain and his cultivation was gone in an instant. Yi Karen had already sheathed her sword. Her face was as cold as ice that couldn't be melted even after 10,000 years. "How dare you break my dantian and cripple my cultivation?" Ji Muxian was dumbstruck. His eyes were wide open and his whole body was trembling violently. "You and my father were just having a martial arts competition. However, you suddenly killed him and crippled his cultivation and broke his dantian. Today, I'm not going overboard by treating you like this." Yi Karen said coldly. "Haha. Ji Muxian laughed bitterly with tears in his eyes. His hair was disheveled and it sounded even worse than crying. He never expected that he, the dignified sect leader of the Kunlun sect, would have such an ending. His cultivation was crippled by a disciple. With his cultivation crippled, he definitely couldn't be the sect leader of the Kunlun sect anymore. He originally saw Zhang Tian as his enemy. However, in the end he realized that Zhang Tian never saw him as an opponent. He was actually crippled by a disciple. At this moment his regret couldn't be washed away even by the 3 rivers and 5 seas. If he hadn't harbored evil intentions or listened to Li Wuji's advice and didn't make an enemy out of Zhang Tian, he wouldn't have ended up like this. He staggered into the depths of the forest. He felt that the world was so big but there was no place for him to stay. As for Yi Yuhui and Ji Mingchuan, they were trembling in fear. They supported Ji Muxian and walked away silently. They didn't dare to reprimand Yi Karen. They were no match for Yi Karen. More importantly, Yi Karen and the Yi family had Jiang Tian Tianqing School and Myth Alliance behind them. Suddenly, Ji Muxian stopped and asked in a deep voice, "Yi Karen, what kind of sword technique is this? Can actually break my Kunlun sword manipulation technique." Tianqing School announced the basic sword technique. "Actually, I didn't enter Tianqing School," Yi Karen said coldly. Ji Muxian smiled bitterly and spat out blood. His body was on the verge of collapse. He swayed a few times before he stabilized himself and staggered away. The confinement effect of the Immortal trap formation was removed. Many disciples of Tianqing School could use their cultivation to their heart's content. The counterattack began. They drove straight into the grotto heavens and secret realms that resisted the Myth Alliance. They completely suppressed and subdued the remnants of the preaching famous sects and reclusive royalty. Then the scene of Lotus Tathagata destroying the Dragon Pond Cave on Mount Baitu and Jiang Tian subduing the Ghost King of Mount Mang was also released. These scenes shocked Wuxia and the world. Humans all over the world were trembling. Kong Teichu's disciples were too strong. They were definitely the strongest force on this planet. The recovery of spiritual energy had been achieved. Nothing could stop them. Chapter 1262. The scene of Jiang Tian tearing the deity trap array apart and subduing the ancient sages was already 100 kilometers in the deep space. Ordinary people couldn't see it, but the near-Earth satellites of China and the United States military had seen it clearly. It was also reported by the Watch Me live streaming platform and many media outlets, and was presented to billions of people around the world. In an instant, Jiang Tian became famous again. Everyone could no longer ignore his existence. For the sake of their own selfish interests, they inverted black and white and poured dirty water. Many people thought that the recovery of spirit qi was a mistake and that Jiang Tian would bring Earth into a place of eternal damnation. Now they were convinced by Jiang Tian after seeing the mark of the ancient sages. Who would raise a different opinion? Great. Well done. We won. Kong Teichu will be remembered in history after today. No one can stop the great plan of the recovery of spiritual aura. Countless people in Wuxia were excited. Especially many of Jiang Tian's friends such as Shen Lu and his wife Iris and her sister, Zhang Yilin, Lu Yiting and others, were so excited that they jumped out of their chairs and waved their fists. Jiang Tian's political and business forces in Wuxia, such as Jiang Tian's Zhang Jinghua family, the Lingnan Tang family and Special Envoy Shen, were originally cruelly suppressed and unstable. Now that Jiang Tian had turned the tables and released all the detainees, the charges were immediately dismissed, and the crisis was all resolved. Not only that, rumors said that Tang Weimin had hopes of becoming the central government, and the Zhang Jinghua family was about to become one of the top political and business families in Yanjin, overlooking Wuxia. No one could stop their momentum. This is what it means when a man achieves the Tao, even his chickens and dogs will ascend to heaven. Alas, what did Zhang Zhongwu do to deserve such a position today? Many political and business observers who knew the inside story shook their heads and sighed with mixed feelings. There's nothing we can do about it. After the Spirit Qi revival, the logic of the whole world will change. Cultivation will become the third cornerstone of human civilization alongside technology and economy. Tianqing School and Kong Teichu were too important. The Zhang family, the Tang family and the Shen family have all followed the right people. Someone's gaze was focused as he gave an explanation. However, there were others who looked as if they had lost their parents. It was especially so for the political and business families who supported the preaching dynasty and the reclusive royalty to fight against Jiang Tian. They were all staring at the TV with their mouths agape. They shivered like quails in the cold wind. Originally they were full of wisdom and confidence. After all, the foundation of the preaching famous families was too deep. They thought that they could break the dominance of Zhang Tian's family and get a share of the profits in the process of the recovery of spiritual aura. But they did not expect such an ending. Sigh, I didn't expect Kong Teichu's strength to be so terrifying. After today there will be no place for my family. A political boss who lived behind the scenes was so scared that he died of a heart attack on the spot. Many of his disciples wailed in grief. However, Zhang Tian did not have the time to pay attention to these ants. They were never real enemies, nor were they qualified to be Zhang Tian's enemies. More than 10 hours had passed since Zhang Tian tore open the Immortal trap formation. Peace had returned to the Spirit Attraction Valley of Mount Amay. The huge Spirit Gathering Array Disk and Spirit Creation Well were being built in an orderly manner and were gradually installed. The many marks of the ancient great emperors in the Immortal trap formation had returned to dormancy. The preaching famous families and the reclusive royalty had been killed, suppressed, and intimidated. Zhang Tian, who had already changed into a white robe, sat on a huge rock. He played with the dull Absolute Heaven sword which did not have any aura fluctuations at all. Around him, the 4 nascent soul stage old monsters and disciples stood respectfully. This sword was used by Emperor Zhongli. It had once cut open the ancient star path and cut through the Milky Way. Zhang Tian now had some understanding of the ancient star path. It was made up of large-scale transmission arrays installed on huge stars. Emperor Zhongli's heavenly connection was to wield this sword and cut through the stars. However, according to the information Zhang Tian had obtained, Emperor Zhongli did not have the strength to cut through the stars with a swing of the sword. He relied more on the power of this sword. Immortal weapon. It's far more powerful than a true artifact or a spirit treasure. Zhang Tian was shocked. This sword was too mysterious. Its energy was completely hidden, but its power was extremely powerful and had already entered the category of immortal artifacts. The god-beating whip, the yellow axe, the deity-tying rope and the golden dragon scissors were only quasi-true artifacts. They were like scrap metal compared to this treasure. Even the splendid mountain river cauldron paled in comparison. With Zhang Tian's current strength, his power would increase tenfold with this sword. He would be able to cut open the sky and wipe out a white city. Normal nascent soul stage grand cultivators would not be able to withstand it. When Zhang Tian formed the chaotic golden core, the power of this sword would be even more unimaginable and terrifying to the extreme. This sword can be my main sword. I can give the 9 flying swords I got from the sword vault to Qing'er. Zhang Tian thought. Then Yi Tianren bowed and said, Master Lu Shang, the Ghost King of Mount Mang, the Dragon Demon of Mount Changbai and many famous families and the reclusive royalty of the Qin dynasty are here to join the Myth Alliance and sign a divine soul contract. All right. Zhang Tian put the sword into the sky-swallowing demon gourd and nodded. Greetings, Lord Taichu. Lu Shang, the Lord of Hejian, knelt on the ground and bowed. Greetings, Lord Taichu. The Yu family is willing to join the Myth Alliance and pledge our loyalty to you. We will fight for mankind until the last drop of our blood. The deputy lord of the Yu family knelt on the ground and trembled in fear. His face was pale and his legs were wet. Then the Yin family, the Ji family, the Jiang family and the current leaders of the reclusive royalty and the dragon guardian lineage came and bowed as if they had seen a god or a demon. These leaders had gone through many checks and investigations. They were quite capable and were willing to join the Myth Alliance loyally. The core members of the famous families had been killed, but there were still many branches and affiliated families. They were also a force to be reckoned with. Greetings, Lord Taichu. All the demons in the world have surrendered and are willing to sign a divine soul contract with Lord Taichu. In the end, even the demon king of the heavenly lake of the White Head Mountain brought by Sujuan, the weasel, the white immortal hedgehog spirit and other demons to kneel before Zhang Tian. Congratulations, Lord Taichu. You have suppressed the famous families of the Preaching Dynasty and conquered the ghost cultivators and the demon cultivators. The Myth Alliance has finally taken shape. Congratulations. The famous families of the Preaching Dynasty have ignored the general situation of the world for their own interests. They deserve to be killed. I, Li Wuji, will be the first to support you. Li Wuji stepped on the cloud and bowed deeply to Zhang Tian with a flattering face. As for Ji Muxian's cultivation being destroyed, he didn't even mention it. This scene shocked many people. Many people thought that the Kunlun sect would definitely take revenge after Zhou Xian was beaten up so badly by Jiang Tian. They didn't expect such an outcome. Jiang Tian only nodded slightly. Everything was understood without words. The 9 elders of Hongmeng. Greetings, Lord Taichu. Suddenly, rumbling sounds could be heard as 9 streaks of light tore through the sky and shot over. Golden Core Cultivators. How is that possible? Does Hongmeng want to fight with the Tianqing school? Are they trying to stir up trouble again? This aura was unusually vast and fierce. Huang Linger and the other disciples were shocked and uneasy. Even the 9 living fossils of Hongmeng are here. Even Li Wuji was shocked. Hongmeng was one of the most mysterious and powerful forces in Wuxia. It had been dormant for countless years, and it was said that its strength was comparable to the famous families of Kunlun and the Preaching Dynasty. Legend had it that they were all people of the mountains and had no connection with any sects or dynasties. They only fought for the common people. However, they didn't do anything in this world-shaking dispute and remained strangely calm. At this moment they suddenly came out of seclusion, which made people feel uneasy. A few old men slowly walked over. Some of them were disabled, some had broken limbs, some were blind and some were mute. However, each of them had a powerful aura like a dragon or a god, which was superior to Li Wuji's. Were you injured by the immortal trap formation or by the mark of the great ancient emperor? Jiang Tian stood up and asked with a serious expression. Yi Tianren trembled and rushed over. He knelt on the ground and said with tears in his eyes, Master, you've finally come out of seclusion. I can die without regrets after seeing you come out of seclusion. We're just a bunch of old fools. We're not like you and Tai Chu who have already broken the dimensional world. We don't deserve your kneeling. The leader of the group was an old man with a broken arm. He looked rough and heaved a sigh. His true essence burst out from his wrists and turned into a hand to help Yi Tianren up. He looked at Jiang Tian and showed some admiration and respect. He bowed deeply, touching his wrists without hands, and said respectfully, Brother Jiang, I came from a mountain village in the Ming Chengzhen dynasty and created the pig slaughtering knife art. After reaching the Sky Immortal level, I felt the existence of the Immortal Trap Formation. Within a year I reached the Golden Core level and tried to tear the Immortal Trap Formation apart, but my hands were cut off by the Erase Spirit. Everyone was shocked. The people of the Ming Chengzhen dynasty were already 500 years old. They were really living fossils and old monsters. I'm Heaven-Stealing Legs, a thief. He stole Wu Zetian's mirror, Zhao Fian's golden plate, Li Shimon's sword used in the Xuanwu Gates rebellion, Zhu Yuanzhang's court chief who killed Lan Yu, Zhang Daoling's Yangping Ji Du Gong seal. An old man without legs in a wheelchair also had the golden core level. He showed off with his saliva flying everywhere. Don't be cocky. Didn't the immortal trap formation cut off your legs? Next to him, an old man with 2 giant axes on his back curled his lips and said viciously. Heaven-Stealing Legs immediately blushed and said angrily, It was just a moment. I drank that day and my legs weren't nimble. Otherwise, the immortal trap formation wouldn't have been able to hit me. It's a dead thing after all. I'm Woodcutter. The old man with 2 giant axes had strong muscles and thick bones. The blood qi in his body surged like a river and rumbled, as if he were bowing to Jiang Tian. But Jiang Tian scanned with his divine sense and found that the old man's chest had been pierced and the edges had healed. His heart was only half of an ordinary person's and was severely deformed. The blood vessels were twisted and displaced, but it was still beating vigorously. Chapter 1263. Another Golden Core Cultivator. I'm blind. 500 years ago and 500 years later, I can be considered the best pupil technique in the world. I heard that Brother Taichu has cultivated the purple lightning eyes. I wonder if you can compete with me. A skinny old man with a bamboo pole in his hand walked over shakily, revealing a fawning smile as he muttered to himself. Old man, can you stop asking for trouble? An old woman walked out and pinched his ear. Brother Taichu tore apart the deity trap formation and defeated the imprints of the ancient gods. Do you have what it takes? If not, then you're not as good as Brother Taichu. Putting everything else aside in terms of pupil techniques, this old man might not. Blind's face turned red as if he was determined to compete with Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian couldn't help but smile. He had heard of the 9 old men of Hongmeng long ago. They were a group of itinerant cultivators who didn't have any orthodoxy. They were even from humble backgrounds. However, all of them were extremely talented and had great understanding. They created their own cultivation techniques and were the strongest cultivators of their time. They were arrogant and unruly. They once attacked the heavens and the deity trap formation. They even fought against the imprints of the ancient emperors. Even though they lost, it was still a glorious defeat. Today, after seeing the number one blind old man with an eye technique so overflowing with battle intent and insisting on fighting with him, Zhang Tian knew that they were truly a group of interesting people. Celestial Leaf's personality was most likely influenced by them. This old man just wants to compete with Brother Taichu. Don't overdo it, don't overdo it. Before the blind man could finish, there was a sudden boom. Someone behind him punched him and sent him flying 1,000 meters away. The blind man's upper body crashed into the mountain wall like a missile. Only half of his body was left outside. He scolded, "My eyes are still bright. Spear God, how dare you sneak attack me? I'm Spear God. Greetings, Brother Taichu. Don't mind this old man. We're the 9 old men of the Red Alliance. We're here to join the Myth Alliance. Please take us in." The Spear God was dressed in old armor and carried an iron spear on his back. His appearance was simple and unadorned, but he was filled with the iron-blooded aura of a soldier. He looked just like an ordinary soldier. Yi Tianren transmitted his voice. This Spear God was from the Song dynasty. Back then, Yu Fei and the Yang family's spear techniques were imparted to them by him. In the middle of it all, he had to stop his lifespan several times to survive until now. He had been waiting for the day when the Immortal Trap Great Array would be torn apart. The news of the 9 elders of Hongmeng joining Kong Teichu and the Myth Alliance was spread, and the whole Tianqing school was in jubilation. Everyone was cheering. These are 9 true immortals of the Golden Core realm. In addition to the Demon Clan and the Ghost Cultivator, the number of Golden Core realm cultivators in Tianqing school can be counted on 2 hands. In addition, there are 4 giants who have formed their nascent soul. Yirenren was in high spirits, his eyes sparkling. All the talents in the world have entered Tianqing school. No one can stop the 10,000-year plan of the recovery of spirit qi. Situ Shao was full of pride. It's just that our status is even worse. We have to work hard to cultivate. Wei Feilong, Zhao Yuankuan and Hu Qingtian looked at each other again. Their faces were solemn and they felt the pressure. Good. Welcome to the Myth Alliance. Let's recover spirit qi together and plant the eternal foundation of our earth. Zhang Tian nodded in joy. Suddenly, the golden lake on his forehead flashed, and the Soul Devourer's divine sense burst out. The Black Soul Devourer's divine sense was like countless tentacles, shooting and waving all over the sky. It drilled into the sea of consciousness of the Ghost Cultivator led by the Ghost King of Mount Mang, the Demon Dragon and other demon cultivators of the Whitehead Mountain, and the leader of the Preaching Sect and the Reclusive Royalty, establishing a divine soul contract. As for the 4 nascent soul realm old monsters and the 9 elders of Hongmeng, there was no need at all. They were originally extremely hostile to the ruins of immortality, and they had a deep understanding of the universe and the laws of cultivation. They were natural allies and very reliable. Under everyone's gaze, Zhang Tian flew to the top of the magnificent spirit guiding formation, which had just been completed. He looked around and said in a low but powerful voice, "Everyone, let's go. The recovery of spirit qi is imperative. A new era is about to begin. Those who join the Myth Alliance or sign a contract will be my allies and comrades. In 3 days, many forces, especially those secret realms, will become the mortal enemies of mankind if they don't join the Myth Alliance. Kill without mercy." This scene was not only clearly heard by the people within 100 miles of Mount Amei, but also witnessed by billions of people sitting in front of the screen. The entire earth was silent at first. Then earth-shattering cheers burst out from the valley of Mount Amei. In the end, the entire world was filled with jubilation. In the face of the imminent changes in the world and the threat of the coevolution of other species, people were a little hesitant and resistant at first. But during this period they had seen how powerful the cultivators were. They were comparable to the entities and many of their doubts disappeared. Who didn't want to become stronger? Who didn't want to stand on the top? Who didn't want to transcend this world? Humans all over the world cheered wildly for the coming era of spirit qi recovery. This was an unparalleled impact on the entire human race. The crowd was boiling like an ocean. Almost every large city was holding banners and building bronze statues of Kong Teichu. The news media was also broadcasting news about Zhang Tian and the recovery of spirit qi. Zhang Tian came to Yanjing Wuxia where the Guardians Alliance was stationed. He invited the heads of state from all over the world to hold the first preparatory meeting of the Myth Alliance. Representatives of the various cultivation sects and families in Wuxia attended. Even the heads of state and military representatives attended. At the meeting, Zhang Tian reiterated the purpose of the Myth Alliance. In short, under the premise that the apocalypse might come, all forces that could be fought for and mobilized on a global scale must be mobilized. The Myth Alliance was a global organization of cultivators formed to resist the invasion of the immortal ruins and the dimensional world. The Earth Defense Coalition Army was the secular government and military force. At present, the Myth Alliance has been joined by Tianqing School, Kunlun Headquarters, Preaching Famous Sects, Reclusive Royalty, Wuxia Guardians Alliance and many other forces. Sitting high on the seat with 4 nascent soul-stage-old monsters standing respectfully behind him, Zhang Tian's fingers gently clasped the armrest of the chair. His majestic gaze swept across the many cultivation powerhouses and military representatives of various countries. He said in a deep voice, "For the Myth Alliance, in order to resist the invasion of the immortal ruins and the dimensional world, in order to recover spirit qi, we can be said to be putting in all our effort at all costs." In fact, at present not only had the powerhouses of Wuxia joined the Myth Alliance, but the remaining forces of the Buddhist sect and Brahmin in India had also joined. Lianxing Lao Ru came to the banks of the Nile River in India and displayed his miracles. The Brahmins and Buddhists were immediately shocked and worshipped him as a deity. They called him the Great Rulai and worshipped him. After all, the Brahmins came from the West Earth dimension and were part of ancient India. They were naturally close to him. But these things require the cooperation of all the countries in the world. In short, all the hidden forces in the world. There are only 3 paths to take. The first is to join the Myth Alliance, participate deeply in the recovery of spirit qi, and become part of the army against the immortal ruins and the dimensional world. But we can't ask all the creatures on Earth to be as fearless and willing to sacrifice as us. Even ants are greedy for life, and being afraid of death is the instinct of intelligent life. They can also not join the Myth Alliance, but they have to sign an agreement with the Myth Alliance and establish a soul contract with me to ensure that they will not betray the humans on Earth and become accomplices and guides of the immortal ruins. This is the second path prepared for them. But if they don't participate and are unwilling to sign the contract, it is clear that they have left a way out for themselves. They will be suspected of joining the immortal ruins and will be killed without mercy. Many heads of state and military representatives nodded. Zhang Tian's old friend, President Jung of the European Union, smiled and said, "Your Excellency, the European Union will support the Myth Alliance at all costs. The Palace of Gods and the Holy See have joined as a whole." Zhang Tian nodded slightly to show his approval. In fact, the Atlantis civilization in the Atlantic Ocean in a broad sense also belonged to the European Union. But the two had no connection, so Zhang Tian did not force it. It was not within the borders of any country in the European Union, so Zhang Tian could suppress it at any time. Therefore, Zhang Tian did not need to mention this point. Then Zhang Tian said with a faint smile, "But there are still some secret realms and forces that have not yet submitted. If Russia's Tunguska Demon Lake, the Egyptian pyramids, the Hanging Gardens and the Tower of Babel in the Mesopotamia, the Atlantis civilization in the Atlantic Ocean, and some foreign gods in the primeval forests of South America and Africa haven't expressed anything." As soon as these words came out, except for General Keynes of the Pentagon who looked indifferent, the military representatives of various countries and even the experts of the cultivation world were shocked. Even if they were the top figures of various countries, they had never heard of these forces before. They immediately understood that this information should have been leaked to Zhang Tian by the Pentagon of the United States. Putin, the great emperor of Russia, glared at the wolf King Alexander who was present, and a trace of fierceness flashed in his eyes. There were many secret forces in the Tunguska Demon Lake that even the Pentagon did not know about. It was probably only the Wolf King who had revealed it to Zhang Tian. The Egyptian president's forehead was sweating and he was on tenterhooks. Zhang Tian said unhurriedly, "I hope that all of you can give up your delusions. In the eyes of the experts hidden in these secret realms and grotto heavens, in the eyes of the foreign gods, human beings are like insects and ants. You have no bargaining chips at all, especially after the immortal trap array was torn apart. They are no longer bound and imprisoned, and can obtain the energy overflowing from the destruction of stars. They have begun to strengthen and evolve rapidly. The existing balance with the secular world has been broken, and they will become even more rampant and unscrupulous. In this regard, we can only suppress them by force and beat them until they kneel and submit. Although the Tianqing school is from Wuxia, we have the whole world and all of mankind in mind. We are willing to help all countries and lead the Global Defense Alliance to suppress them all. The premise is that all countries provide intelligence support and disclose all information about the secret realms and foreign gods. What do you think? Sensing Jiang Tian's cold and dignified gaze, the Egyptian military representative bowed and said, "Leader of the Taichu Alliance, the ancient gods of our country are sleeping in the pyramids. They once protected the pharaoh and the people. They have been the faith of our people for thousands of years. How can they be easily erased? I think there is a possibility of persuading them. Please give us some time." The Russian emperor continued with a smile. "Leader of the Taichu Alliance, the experts in the Tunguska Demon Lake have been in hiding for many years and have never interfered with the secular world. I think even if the ruins of immortality really invades, they should maintain a neutral attitude. However, if we force them to sign a soul contract, I'm afraid it will backfire and cause them to counterattack." Seeing that the Russian emperor had expressed his stance, the representatives of